Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook Live. We are live from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios. I just got done watching Noah Lyles run the 200, although I think this was like kind of the first, like the semifinals, and then they'll run, I guess, in the finals again or whatever. But this guy, I mean, this must be the fastest guy. They said he's like 1/10 of a second behind Usain Bolt. So we'll be keeping our eyes on that. Go USA in the Olympics. Ian is here today. Hello, Ian.
What up, what up?
Got a lot of football to get into. I do want us to start off the top by giving something away. We normally don't take care of the 2 o'clock audience the way we should. So be caller 5 right now at 615-737-1025, and you'll win a 4-pack of tickets to see the Nashville Sounds taking on Indianapolis this Thursday at First Horizon Park. Good luck on that. And again, they're going to be here all week. So get on out to First Horizon Park. Okay, let's start on the news of the day. It's funny to me, I don't know how funny it is to you, but it is funny to me, that yesterday I tried to get ahead. Sometimes it's hard in talk radio, news radio, TV. Sometimes it's hard to get work done ahead of time. Everybody else, it's like, oh, I got a meeting at 9 o'clock, but I can prepare for it and I can get it ready and I can. For me, it's like, okay, well, let's try to plan ahead. And as we try to plan ahead, let's see where it goes. So I went to practice yesterday. It was a fine practice. Some good on offense, some bad on offense, some good on defense, some bad on defense. And when I got back, I was kind of putting my thoughts together as to what today's show was going to be. And I had a segment that was going to run at 2:45 about the fact that Jamal Adams had a maintenance day earlier this week. Jamal Adams didn't practice yesterday. Jamal Adams didn't practice on Saturday. It's very clear Jamal Adams is already hurt. Like, the guy has played 10 games or 9 games or whatever it is over the last 2 years, and he's already hurt. They signed him, and it was like, I don't know if this is a good idea because Jamal Adams is already hurt. And everyone said, no, he'll be okay. He said that, hey, I finally feel healthy, and he's hurt again. I'm like, this probably highlights the need for the Titans to go out and go get another safety. And don't kid yourself. I know Matthew Jackson has 3 interceptions so far in training camp and has been lighting it up. Had another interception yesterday, although it was of Malik, but he had another interception yesterday. I know Matthew Jackson's doing his thing, but that's not a starting safety in the NFL. And so as I was putting it together last night, trying to get ahead, bam, Adam Schefter reports that the Titans have signed Quandre Diggs for what was originally reported as up to $5 million a year. In reality, it's $3 million plus incentives. So yesterday, again, I was planning to get ahead, got a lot of stuff going on. I wanted to make a topic about the fact that Jamal Adams is hurt again and that the Titans need another safety, and boom, they go out and sign a safety. Clearly, this was in the works. Because at the beginning of training camp, before Jamal Adams got hurt, Jamal Adams was asked about Quandre Diggs, and he said, hey, I'm not going to tell him where to sign, but I'd love to have him here. Kind of indicated to all of us this was in the works. But I think that Adams' clear unreliability and the fact that Elijah Molden is just not a starting safety in the NFL. I think the combination of that forced the Titans' hand. And kudos to the Tennessee Titans for finally waking up and smelling the pot of coffee instead of what they've done over the last couple of years, which is when the Titans have tried to fudge a player who's not a starting caliber player into a position that they shouldn't be starting in, instead of getting to camp and saying, okay, it's not working out between Radens and Petit Frere, so let's go out and get a right tackle. Let's sign David Cushenberry. Let's claim Dennis Kelly. Let's do something. The Titans said, no. They opened up 2022 with Malik Willis as the backup quarterback. I was at practice. I'm like, you cannot put this guy in a game. No. And that's how you end up without having a starting right tackle. That's how you end up on Sunday Night Football against the Kansas City Chiefs, sticking Malik Willis in a game that you would have had a chance to win with a competent backup quarterback. So again, instead of the Titans saying, hey, we know Jamal Adams will be okay. You trust us on this. Jamal Adams will be fine. Instead of that, when Jamal Adams is already hurt, instead of, we think Elijah Molden can do it. We think Matthew Jackson can do it. We think these Scarbinis off the practice squad can do it. The Titans said, no, let's go out and sign a player who's actually capable of playing in the NFL. I know it's crazy, right? But this isn't what the Titans have done the last couple of years. I mean, Andre Dillard in training camp last year, it was obvious that he sucked. Everybody asked Vrabel all the time about Andre Dillard. And the excuses we got, Arden Key's really good, everybody. Uh-huh. Well, he's the first one in the meeting room. He's working hard. Uh-huh. They're putting the pads on for the first time. It'll be okay. No. He sucked, and you needed to do something about it, and you didn't do something about it. So the Titans spent all offseason, after they traded away Kevin Byard, after they let Kayvon Wallace go in free agency, they spent the entire offseason knowing they needed a safety. They were connected to all of them, right? They brought Marcus May in for a visit. Diana Rossini reported about Justin Simmons. We had heard some whispers about Quandre Diggs. The one guy we hadn't heard anything about was Jamal Adams. And then they all of a sudden out of nowhere signed Jamal Adams. And I kept telling you, I'm not sure that really counts. The way things have been done around here lately, and it is not just John Robinson. It's not just Mike Vrabel. I mean, Rand Carthon and Chad Brinker are guilty of this last season. But the way things have been done around here was, oh, no, just trust us. Well, at least at safety, the Titans are not doing the just trust us, Jamal will be okay. Just trust us, Elijah Molden can start in the NFL. And I can't tell you how much I appreciate the fact that the Titans, for once in the last 3 or 4 years, have said, no, we have a problem and we need to fix it. Now, Pro Football Focus says Quandre Diggs stinks, but I don't think Quandre Diggs stinks. Diggs also plays. This is another important aspect of this that wasn't apparently a big deal when it came to Jamal Adams, but is a big deal, period, which is the number one ability in the NFL is availability. And Quandre Diggs has not missed a game in 4 years. So at least there's that. Plus, I don't think Quandre Diggs stinks. I think, the league is telling us what Quandre Diggs is, which is probably a below average or average veteran safety, which is why he's getting $3 million. But that's okay, because average or even slightly below average is better than what you had yesterday. So I do not have any qualms with this deal. This is a good deal for the Titans, because even if Diggs absolutely sucks, which is not likely, it's $3 million and a cap's fake. Plus, if Jamal Adams does play this season, which there is zero guarantee that he can stay healthy or that we should expect him to stay healthy or whatever it may be, I mean, then the Titans can play the 3 safeties that Denard Wilson wants to play, that I know Denard Wilson wants to play, because Rick Spielman, the former general manager of the Vikings, said he spent time with Denard Wilson this summer and got to know Denard Wilson this summer. And he said Denard Wilson wants to play with the 3 safeties, a la what the Ravens did last year with Kyle Hamilton, Geno Stone, and Marcus Williams. And the hope can be that Amani Hooker can be Kyle Hamilton. Now, let's not get ahead of ourselves. Amani Hooker is very clearly not Kyle Hamilton. Geno Stone can be Quandre Diggs, and Marcus Williams can be Jamal Adams. That's the hope. I actually think the guy that would be the Kyle Hamilton role would be Adams, but I mean, again, Kyle Hamilton's probably the most important player on their defense, and I can't invest that much into Jamal Adams. So good signing for the Titans. Not an earth-shattering signing, Not a, we have an elite secondary now signing, but it is a solid sign. And by the way, for everybody out there that gets out on Twitter and says Jared Stillman never says anything good about the Titans, let's bottle this up and remember it. Because when I think they do something right, I'll give them credit. And I think this Diggs deal, I think it had to happen, and I'm glad it did. 615-737-1025. That's our phone number. That's how we're starting. 615-737-1025. If you want to weigh in here on the program, a lot of you do want to weigh in, so we'll get some of your thoughts. Plus, D-May said something that I think is 1,000% true. I guess 1,000% is not really a percent. 100% true. And I think it's something that the Titans really have got to keep in mind when it comes towards building this team and going through this season and helping the quarterback. We'll get to that next. Stillman and Company, 102.5. What is the game?
I looked at it from the standpoint of this is sort of like insurance for the quarterback. You get you a good defense, a defense that, allows, let's just say, 14 points a game, 15 points a game. You get you that type of defense so your quarterback doesn't have to put the whole team on his back, that you can sort of slow walk him and sort of allow him to sort of grow within his offense. Because if they don't have a defense, we know how it's going to be. They're going to try to score points. They're going to be throwing the ball around the yard. And I just don't think that's advantageous for Levis at this time, even though he do have the receivers that can possibly do that. But you bolster up that defense and you make your quarterback's job a little bit easier.
Ding, 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 ding. Correct, Derek Mason. You know, we keep talking about the Titans in this season, and here's the thing about the NFL. In baseball, basketball, and even I think to a certain extent hockey, although maybe not as much in hockey, and I'm not exactly sure why that is. But in baseball, basketball, and hockey, like there are teams that just know we're going to have a terrible season. Very rarely does that happen in the NFL. Last year, there was one team that went into the season and said, we're going to have a terrible season. And it was the Arizona Cardinals. And their franchise quarterback wasn't going to be back until November or December with a torn ACL he suffered the year before. In baseball, like I already know who's going to have a bad season next year. Chicago White Sox, Miami Marlins, you know, the Pirates, the same old crap bums. Like, you know, they tank for 4 years and then they become good at baseball again. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. You know, it is what it is. Basketball, like I know the Detroit Pistons are going to have a bad year this year. I know, you know, again, I know who's going to be competing for the championship. Boston is going to be competing for the championship. Who out west is going to be competing? Minnesota with Anthony Edwards. They'll be competing for the championship. And then, Ian, I'm trying to think off the top of my head. In hockey, is there anybody out there that we know is going to suck? I mean, Arizona, when they were Arizona before they became Utah, Arizona went into like the last 5 seasons knowing they were going to be terrible.
Well, Chicago, I don't know about next season, but the last couple.
They have known that they would be awful. And so for the most part, you can do that in the other sports. You don't do that in football. Again, maybe one team per year goes into a season saying, we're going to be awful. And I know there are no Titan fans that are sitting there right now thinking about this season and saying, it's okay, we're going to be awful. It's okay, Jared. We don't have a right tackle. We're going to be awful. It's fine. You know, 4 wins, 5 wins, get a high draft pick. Let Brian Callahan build this team. Let Bill Callahan coach this team. Let it, all those kind of things. So that's why they needed to sign Quandre Diggs. The Titans are not going to be Super Bowl contenders this year. Like, we're all going to have to just, I know some of you don't want to hear that. I heard somebody text into the midday show in the last hour, and they said, if Will Levis is half of what everybody thinks he's going to be, they'll go deep in the playoffs. I'm like, guffaw. Again, this is a conference that has Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, Patrick Mahomes, Joe Burrow, CJ Stroud. Justin Herbert's team never wins, but he's good too. Deep into the playoffs, that's a stretch. So I'm going to tell you, this is not a Super Bowl contending team, but the moral of this season, the most important thing that will come out of this season is whether or not the quarterback is going to be successful. And while nobody wants to say this, the way quarterbacks are judged is by winning and losing. Steve McNair, when I was a kid, I looked at Steve McNair as the type of quarterback that I didn't care if it was Brett Favre, Tom Brady, Peyton Manning, Rich Gannon. I knew my Titan team could go toe-to-toe with anybody because they had McNair. If you look at McNair's stats, McNair never had elite level stats. He never had the stats that rivaled Brett Favre. Brett Favre was throwing for 350 and 400 yards in some of these games. He didn't have the touchdowns that Manning had. He didn't light it up with Rich Gannon, with Jerry Rice and Tim Brown and that Bill Callahan offense. He didn't have any of that. But it didn't matter because Steve McNair won games. That's what mattered to all of us, is that Steve McNair won. Well, I don't know if Steve McNair gets to a Super Bowl in 1999 if he doesn't have one of the best defenses in the NFL. I don't know that Steve McNair makes the Pro Bowl in 2000 if he doesn't have the number 1 defense in the NFL the year that the 2000 Ravens set a scoring record. So as much as we think about Steve McNair and all the success he had, well, just know Blaine Bishop was a part of that. Randall Godfrey was a part of that. Javon Curse was a part of that. Albert Haynes was a part of that. Kevin Carter was a part of that. Samari Rolle was a part of that. It all matters. Outside of Justin Herbert, the way we judge quarterbacks is by winning and losing. Brock Purdy, and I have no idea how good Brock Purdy is on his own merits. But Brock Purdy has the best left tackle, the best running back, the best coach, the second best tight end, 2 receivers, and an unbelievable defense with the highest paid pass rusher, arguably the best middle linebacker, and again, a solid all-around team. Well, that helps elevate Brock Purdy. That's what the Titans have to do with Levis, so that instead of asking Levis to score 23 points a game, you can ask Levis to score 21 points a game. And there's a difference on that. So I think Derek is completely right when he sits there and he says, hey, this is insurance for the quarterback. Yeah, we got him some receivers. Yeah, we drafted him a left tackle. Yeah, we signed him a center. We signed him another running back. We got him an offensive guru coach. Still got to play some defense now. Because you're not going to beat anybody 55-45, not without a right tackle. Again, the Titans don't have an elite wide receiver on this team. They don't really have a starting tight end. So they're going to need to win some of these games by scoring 21 points. And the defense is going to have to hold people to 18. Now, I'm not sure they're going to do that. But again, at least you got to try. Because this is the NFL. Nobody is going to sit around this season and say the Titans win 4 games and say, no, Levis will be okay. Nobody's going to do that. Again, Jordan Love just got $55 million a season because the Packers got hot in December last year. If not, Jordan Love, in my opinion, is the backup to Bo Nix or J.J. McCarthy this year. Phone lines driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, 615-737-1025. Ryan in Nashville says, per Jim Wyatt's practice report, Jamal Adams was out due to rest. Well, I don't personally know if Adams was out due to rest. I know I was at practice 2 times this week, and Jamal Adams was out both times. If Jamal Adams has to take 2 days off a week, that's a problem. Jamal Adams has played 9 games, I think, over the last 2 years. I watched the first game he played last year against the Giants. It was a Monday Night Football game, and Daniel Jones on the first drive scrambled, and Jamal Adams made the tackle, and Jamal Adams got hurt. His first tackle got hurt, out. You cannot bank on Jamal Adams. Another texter says, TD reported the Titans offered Diggs before Adams signed, so they didn't wait until he was hurt to do this. Now, again, if the Titans offered Quandre Diggs at the beginning of training camp, and Diggs is the one who lowered the money expectation and said, okay, I'll do the $3 million with the incentives that can take it up to $5 million. If Diggs is the one who did that, then that's good negotiating on the Titans' part. But we don't know that. I mean, the way I probably think it went down was they probably had the same offer they had to Adams, which is the veteran minimum, the $1.2 million guaranteed. Probably had that on the table for Diggs. And Diggs was like, I think I can do better than a veteran minimum. And then they got into practice, saw that Jamal Adams needs 8 rest days a week. The Lord only gives you 1 rest day a week. And Jamal Adams needed 2 last week. And that Elijah Molden, for all the positive things I guess he does, has his faults and is not a starting NFL safety. Okay, let's up it a little bit. I have no idea which one happened. But if the Titans up their offer to Diggs, which is probably likely, then that tells you that no, the Titans got out on the practice field and realized we need to do something about this, which again is my whole point. At some time, when it comes to being honest with yourself about your football team, you have to smell the coffee, see where you're deficient, and do something about it. And I'll give the Titans credit because they did that. 615-737-1025 is our phone number, 615-737-1025. Plus, another position the Titans are monitoring. I think this is a one-horse race, and I think the Titans are definitely keeping their eyes open, and we could see another similar situation. We'll get to that coming up next. Get half off this family-owned Chicago restaurant right here in Nashville. Winners of numerous Best of awards, this is truly one of the best-kept secrets in Nashville. Staley's Chicago Italian Dining brings amazing Italian food to the South. including original Italian beef sandwiches, Vienna Chicago-style hot dogs, and the best gyros south of Chicago. Head to thegamenational.com/deals now to get half off a $20 gift card while supplies last.
Fred seemed almost relieved to be just back out here practicing, helmet pads, all that. How's he look now that you've got an opportunity to see?
He's practiced like that, you know. I think he's practiced like he's a guy that missed playing football, and he's excited to be back out. And I think he's had a nice 2 days back in pads. You know, this is really his first 2 days of practice, and it's been a good showing for him so far. So we'll see as we stack some days, and you get a little bit more sore and a little bit more tired as the pads weigh down some. But I've been pleased with where he started at.
That was Brian Callahan talking about the first 2 days of padded practice for Nicholas T. Frere, a.k.a.
PT.
PT. And so the Titans signed Quandre Diggs, and I think it's because they got out on the practice field and they realized, yeah, Jamal Adams, we can't rely on him. We hope Jamal Adams makes it to the season. We hope Jamal Adams makes a difference. We hope. But we can't rely on him. And Elijah Molden, again, he's not an NFL starter. I think he's a backup. And I think he's a better backup than, say, Trey Avery at corner or than Mike Brown, whatever, at safety. He's a good backup. They're good to have a backup. He's not a starter. All right, fine. We'll pay the $3 million and sign Quandre Diggs. And I think the Titans are thinking the same thing at right tackle. Now, somebody texted into the text line and said, you're about to beg them to sign a right tackle now. Oh, boy. No, I'm not about to do that because I'm honest. You see, here's what's crazy about a lot of different people. You know, Skip Bayless did this for years. Skip Bayless badmouthed LeBron every day. And I'll be real with you. There was a point in time when I wondered to myself if LeBron James had the chops to win a championship. Certainly didn't win it in Cleveland when they had a team good enough to do so and they lost to Boston. Certainly didn't do it that first year in Miami when they lost to Dirk and the Dallas Mavericks. I wondered if LeBron had it in him to win a title. Then he beat Oklahoma City. Then he beat San Antonio. Then he beat Golden State when he was in Cleveland. And it's like, okay, you cannot like LeBron, but LeBron can win a championship. But Skip, he could not back down off of that. It was always something about LeBron every day. And considering that LeBron's won 4 titles, that shtick from Skip got old, and now Skip doesn't have a job. I tell it like it is. So when I went to practice yesterday, I kept my eyes right there on old PT. And I have to say, I thought he was not bad. And that's good because I think the Titans are hoping and praying that he can play right tackle for them. Because I think the Titans are hoping and praying that they don't have to go out there and do what they did with Quandre Diggs at the right tackle spot, because there's not going to be a Quandre Diggs at tackle that is available this time of the year. Now, they can go claim somebody off of a practice squad. They can go bring in a Raven Clark and stick him at right tackle, and it'll probably be better than what the Titans have outside of PT. But I think they're really hoping, like, hey, he's got the size of a tackle. He's played some tackle. He played tackle at Ohio State. Let's see. And yesterday in practice, PT looked like a usable right tackle. Granted, it's one practice. And that's what Brian Callahan said. But, hey, let's see what happens when he's banging around in there with the pads on, and it's not just his first day back on the field. Oh, thank God I'm on the field. Let's see what it is after that. And I would argue, let's see what it is Saturday night against San Francisco. But they did one-on-ones yesterday in practice, and the offense was the quarterback. I think they were doing 7-on-7 on one side of the field in the end zone. So it was Levis and Boyd and Ridley and Pollard and Burks and Okonkwo or Wiley versus the starting defense. And everybody was watching that, and I too was watching a little bit of that. But then I saw the fat guys were down on the other side, Bill Callahan standing in the middle saying, 80, go! And then all of a sudden, one guy comes off the edge and, here's J.C. Latham trying to stand him up. So I didn't see all the reps, but I did see some of them. PT looked good. PT did not get beat. When I watched them in team period yesterday, it's like I can't give you a full assessment on what Will Levis is doing right now because I'm not watching Will Levis. I'm watching the line because I know as well as anybody, and so do you, that if Will Levis doesn't have a line blocking for him, then it doesn't matter what Will Levis is capable of doing because he won't be able to do it. So I'm watching the line, and I see PT holding up. Every rep, I'm looking at right tackle, right guard. I've seen some whiffs from Skoronski that I don't like. I've seen Cushenberry get manhandled a couple times. Again, that's not necessarily something that I really like. But yesterday, watching the right side, specifically PT, he held his own. And so I think the Titans got out to practice, realized they had to do something at safety, and they went out and did it, which is good. And now I think they're sitting there looking at right tackle, and they're going to try to figure out if they have to do something or not. And maybe the backup option on this is Jaron Christian, who played tackle last year for Bill Callahan in Cleveland and has experience in the NFL. Also went to Louisville. But I think maybe that's kind of the fallback. Maybe there's a guy out there they can sign. They have to in a pinch. But, I mean, the Titans really, really, really want Petit Frere to be the right tackle because he's the only guy on the team that is actually talented enough to be a starting right tackle in the NFL. The problem is there's a lot of guys who have talent that don't end up becoming great players. Now, as far as the other guys, Duncan and Ojukwu, I think they've given up on both of them. I think they know, like, yeah, okay, we'll put them out there, and they'll play in the second half on Saturday night against San Francisco. But the idea of John Ojukwu or Jalen Duncan starting at right tackle for the Titans, I don't think that is valid anymore. Like, I think that I have seen enough to say, nah, it ain't working out for old Ojukwu over there. And Jalen Duncan, he's got the size and the legs and he's built, but he just can't play. And I think they know that. So now they're banking all their hope on PT. And if PT gives them hope over the next 3 weeks that he can do it, then they'll feel safe enough to go in the season with Latham at left tackle, PT at right tackle, and whoever you want at the swing spot. I'm guessing Christian would be first up, but Leroy Watson's gotten some reps out there. Whatever it may be. But that's what they're hoping for. The one thing that the Titans have done in the past is they have hoped for something that was not likely to happen. And the Quandre Diggs signing gives me hope that the Titans are no longer going to just sit there with their fingers up their tush, just waiting for Malik Willis to be a backup quarterback or waiting for a right tackle to fall into their laps. This time I actually think the Titans realize, hey, we've got a massive hole here, and Johnny Joe, who we thought could do it, who clearly can't do it. Let's go to plan B. I think that's kind of the decision that they've made. At least that's what they've shown us with the Diggs signing. And I hope, I don't know if it does or not, I hope that it continues. 615-737-1025. One texter asks, and I think, again, this is exactly what I'm talking about. Jared, with the timing of the Diggs signing, do you think the Titans waited to see in PF? I don't know who that is. Nicholas Petit Frere, a.k.a. PT. Did they wait to see PT in practice and say, okay, we have our right tackle, now we can sign Diggs? No. I do not think the Titans are there. I am certainly not there after one solid day of practice. You'd have to be an idiot to take one solid day of practice and say, we're good. I mean, I told you guys, last training camp, Treylon Burks looked like he was going to be A.J. Brown. There is no hyperbole there. When Burks went down in Minnesota, because I had been to pretty much every practice up until that point, when Burks went down in Minnesota, I mean, we went right on the air. He got hurt at 12:35, 12:45, and we went on the air at 2. And it was taking everything in me not to say cancel the season, because that's how much of an impact Burks looked like in practice last year. So I'm not going to get carried away over one practice. But it's certainly better than those practices Andre Dillard had. Oh, no. One texter says, PT season. Jared's back on the PT hype train. First of all, back. Ian, where's this back stuff coming from?
I mean, he wasn't terrible his rookie year.
He wasn't good. And I said, and again, this is the difference between hoping and having a brain. I said, they can go into next year with PT at right tackle because maybe him not getting the reps last year, maybe that allowed, maybe that he got the reps in the games and that as a rookie, he'll be better his second year. Okay, fine. If that's the hype train, then you've got low expectations for what a hype train is. Because I certainly was not excited about him playing right tackle, and then he got suspended. I thought, oh, God. Texas says, no more right tackle story, question mark? We'll see. Again, one practice. That's it. Chigakonkwo, I mean, if we were doing this off of one practice, and I understand because guys get drafted for all sorts of reasons and people around the league are stupid. I'm not saying it's the Titans, but trust me, there are people around the NFL that I don't know where they come up with some of this stuff. But if we were doing this off of one practice, I'd be getting Chigakonkwo's arm length and inseam and everything else to get ready to fit him for a gold jacket. And then Chig got out there last season, couldn't catch. So it's one practice. And I think the 2 padded practices this week on Wednesday and Thursday will be very important. And then, of course, they play Saturday. And on Saturday, there's no more of this, well, was that good defense or was that bad offense or was that – because, you know, if San Francisco's third stringers are dominating you, you've got a problem. 615-737-1025 is our phone number, 615-737-1025 here on Stillman and Company. Get back into your phones. And, of course, yesterday from practice and much more. The Game Summer Ticket Tour presented by Green River Whiskey has just one more stop left. Join Big Joe Dubin at Fog Street Lawn Care at 648 Fog Street this Thursday from 4 to 6. He will have your chance to win free tickets to upcoming concerts in Nashville, including Weezer, Train, Dierks Bentley, and more. Also get signed up for the grand prize, tickets to a Preds home game, Sounds game, and the Big Machine Music City Grand Prix. Get excited about that. Also, there is one thing that yesterday's practice, if we're allowed to get excited about one practice for PT, then there is something yesterday I was like, I don't know about. We'll get to that next. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106 for the game.
I got a text 2 days ago from Omar Kelly, who is with the All SI, All Dolphins, Sports Illustrated. They're however they have their deal, right? And
he's been covering the Dolphins for a
long time. We're talking Miami Sun Sentinel and other outlets. He's a long timer, right? But I got a text and he said, "Hey man, did Aaron Brewer have trouble with snaps when he was up there?"
Oh my God! Oh.
Yeah. So listen, I'll say this, forget the right tackle story, tell the center story, because this is an issue. Now, of course, yesterday in practice, there was a bad snap, but that wasn't Cushenberry, that was Cole Spencer. But this is an issue that has been solved with this team. Just the Aaron Brewer, the Lloyd Cushenberry, I forget the PFF ratings and all that foolishness. It's an upgrade. And just that upgrade and not having that pocket collapse. And I'm going to tell you a big example of that. Watching yesterday during the pass rushing part of it, where it's O-line, D-line, right? Tavondre Sweat, Jeffrey Simmons, they both tried to bull rush on Cushenberry. And he just said, you know what, I'm going to drop this anchor and I'm going to settle in, and you're not going anywhere. And that is what's going to help Levis. And that is why you shouldn't be as concerned about that. You should still be concerned, but not as concerned about that O-line, just simply because of Cushenberry.
That was TD last week, and I don't have anything that contradicts that whatsoever. And I'm especially glad to see Aaron Brewer gone. But as I told you about Nicholas Teat Frere, a.k.a.
PT.
As I told you about PT's solid performance yesterday in practice, I was a little disappointed by old Lloyd Cushenberry. And maybe I'm the only guy that was at practice yesterday that was worried about what I saw from the center. But he got worked yesterday pretty badly by Tavondre Sweat. He got worked inside the middle. He and Skoronski both. I mean, I'm a little worried. Latham, I got to tell you, Latham I like. There is, he's got the big feet, the big ankles, the big legs, the big butt, the big, he's big, and he's keeping guys in front of him in these one-on-one drills. Right tackle, we know, is a work in progress, but yesterday PT was solid. Right guard, I think, is kind of a disaster right now. And center and left guard yesterday, there were too many times where my eyes in team period were focused on the right side of the line, only to see there be pressure for Levis. I can't even tell you if Levis is completing some of these passes or not. I'll rely on Jim Wyatt's stats because I'm just watching the line. Because once again, I'll say this 100 times. None of this matters if they can't block. And we all know that. And there was pressure up the middle yesterday against Will Levis. Now, maybe some of the Cushenberry issue yesterday was who's around him, i.e. the right guard and Peter, who got turnstiled a couple of times yesterday, disappointed with one of his one-on-one reps, very disappointed by one of Peter's one-on-one reps against some guy I'd never heard of. Peter went up there against some Scarbini and got completely turned. And I absolutely hate that. But some of it, I feel like it's Cushenberry. And Cushenberry had a bad snap yesterday in team period with Will Levis, where, again, I don't know what was said, but I think I know what was said, just from the gesturing. It was a shotgun snap. It got dirted, and it was, blow the whistle, and it plays over. And Bill Callahan was standing back there where the O-line coach stands, and he said something to Levis. And then after he said something to Levis, he turned and yelled at the offensive line. My guess is he looked at Levis and was like, whose fault? Did you not catch it? Or was it a bad snap? Levis probably was like, it's a bad snap. It's like, come on. And if these backup centers, Levin and Spencer and whoever, if they fumble the snap, I don't care. But if it's the guy they're paying $12 million to and he's not snapping the ball, that's a problem. So it's not the end of the world. I'm not hitting the panic button. But we did see a bad snap in team period. We did see Tavondre Sweat literally eat him for breakfast. So I think it's fair after yesterday's practice to be a little concerned. Now, Lloyd Cushenberry is the third highest paid center in the NFL. I think we all know he's probably not the third best center in the NFL, but that's what happens when you go to the market. There were two centers available, and a lot of teams needed centers. That's why the Dolphins signed Aaron Brewer. And we know Aaron Brewer sucks. But there were 2 available. 3 if you count Connor Williams, but I don't because he tore his ACL in December. So 2 guys, Cushenberry and Byard. Now, I liked Byard more than I liked Cushenberry, but who am I to argue about what Bill Callahan decided to do? So I don't have a problem with the fact that the Titans overpaid the center position because my expectation was, okay, Cushenberry and Byard. They're not all pros, although I think Byard has been to the Pro Bowl a couple of times. They're not all pros, but they're starting caliber centers. And I do not think Aaron Brewer, even though Miami paid him, I do not think Aaron Brewer is a starting caliber center. So by signing one of those guys and knowing that when you go into free agency and there's only 2 guys out there, you're going to pay a buttload for those guys, I'm okay with it. In order to justify signing Lloyd Cushenberry, he doesn't need to be the 3rd best center in the NFL. He just needs to be a capable starting center. What TD was just talking about right there. And yesterday, he was not that in practice. And I've seen Andy Levitre, and I've seen some of these guys. They get signed as free agents, and it's like, the hell are they paying him $40 million for? And I don't want to feel that way about Lloyd Cushenberry. Josh texts into the text line, says, isn't health still a concern for PT? That's why I'm not ready to say right tackle is fixed. Also, how much are the starters playing on Saturday? Brian Callahan would not reveal how much the starters will play Saturday, just a little bit. I'd play them 3 series. And I know that's probably a little too much, but I'd do it because I think every single player on that team can use the extra reps. Whether it's the offensive line, whether it's PT, whether it's the young quarterback, whether it's the 2 new receivers with the young quarterback. The only guy who I wouldn't play 3 series with on offense, defense, different story. But the only guy who I wouldn't play 3 series with on offense is DeAndre, and he's already hurt. So, I mean, I'm not, Burks, get your butt out there. And I think they will put his butt out there. But I do not know how much the starters are going to play. And as far as the PT thing, health being a concern, yes. Talent is a concern too. Now, he had 1 good day of practice, just like Lloyd Cushenberry, in my opinion, had 1 bad day of practice. Does not mean I'm ready to give somebody else a try at center, and it does not mean that I'm ready to commit to PT. I'm just calling it how I see it, and what I saw was I think I saw a good day of practice out of PT. Dustin in Nashville says, have they tried Dylan Radins at right tackle in recent weeks as a fallback for if PT does not work out? No, they have not. I think Bill Callahan and Brian Callahan have decided he is a guard, kind of like Peter. They all decided Peter's a guard instead of this wishy-washy bullcrap last year about, well, you know, Peter could be a tackle, Peter could be a guard, Peter could. Brian Callahan's like, he's a guard. He's going to play guard. Now, yesterday, they wouldn't have moved Radins out no matter what because Sadiq Charles was out of practice for personal reasons, and so Radins was running with the ones. So that right there is a little different in and of itself. 615-737-1025 is the phone number. 615-737-1025. Coming up next, there is a massive, literally a massive development right now in training camp. And I want to get to it because I think it's important. We'll do that next. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106 for the game. Stillman and Company, 1025, 1063 The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook Live. We are live from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios. So I started the show off talking about the Quandre Diggs signing. And I say, yesterday I was trying to get ahead of my work a little bit, knowing there wasn't going to be a practice today. So I was going to try to get ahead of my work a little bit and kind of put the show together last night so I could have less to do this morning. The opposite of procrastinating, the opposite of what I did in high school. But then the Diggs signing happened, and it was like, okay, that changes things a little bit. So this is what would have led off the show. This is my biggest, both literally and figuratively, my biggest takeaway from practice yesterday and my biggest takeaway from practice in general so far. It's T'Vondre Sweat. Now, I don't know if I should get excited about this or not, but T'Vondre Sweat has answered the bell. For starters, the red flag baggage, which we worried about. And I'm not going to sit here and pretend like we didn't bitch about it every day, because we did. Through 2 weeks, non-existent. The questions about his conditioning and his shape seem to be answered for now. I mean, I feel the same way I felt about him when I saw him at rookie minicamp, where I saw him out on the field and I look at his body and I'm like, he's not that fat. I'm thinking 380 pounds. I'm thinking like Orca out there. Instead, he must be 370 or whatever it might be, but he is not a whale. I mean, he doesn't look any different than some of the other big DTs that they have out there. But again, he's been making it through the practices. Even yesterday, there was one where I was worried he maybe dinged his shoulder up a little bit because he came off when the first team came off gingerly, but then he got down on a knee next to Simmons and they sprayed some water in his mouth and he didn't seem to be bad. So, I mean, he's answering the bell. Does he get tired? Sure. But he's a big boy and big boys get tired during the regular games too. As of right now, I do not see his conditioning as a problem. And in practice, he's making plays. There will be, first team versus first team in the team period, and there will be a sack of Levis, a quote-unquote sack because they can't hit the quarterback. So it's like they get there, and it's a sack, but then Levis finishes the throw anyways. And I can't tell you how many times it's like, who got him? Well, it was Sweat. Sweat who got him. That happened yesterday. Sweat would have had a safety yesterday. I was watching the right tackle, obviously, and all of a sudden Levis is in the backfield. I'm like, who is that? And it was Sweat, and he just dominated Cushenberry. So being on the practice field and watching him play, I feel him. The way that, when you watch a game and you feel a guy in the game, it's like, oh my God, they've thrown the ball to this guy 100 times. And then you look at the stat sheet and it says they only threw it to him 6 times, but it feels like those 6 were just so impactful. That's what T'Vondre Sweat is right now, so far in practice. Again, I feel him. So I asked Brian Callahan, does he feel what T'Vondre Sweat's doing? Here's what he said yesterday.
How much do you feel T'Vondre's presence when you're coaching the offense against us?
A lot. I feel it a lot. He's just so big and so powerful, and he's got real pass rush wiggle for a guy his size. I mean, he can get on the edge and work it. He's got fast hands. And I feel it standing back there. I feel the push. Those are two, him and Jeff inside. You feel that. And you watch him in one-on-ones, and he can win one-on-one, which a lot of times those big guys struggle to win one-on-one. But he's got enough quickness to do it. So I feel him in the middle of the defense, and I think that's a really good thing for us as a team. It's not great for me in practice.
I mean, I stand there, I'm feeling the same thing you are. And that's why I asked Brian Callahan that question yesterday, because I wanted to know, I wanted to know confirmation. Like, are you feeling the same thing that I'm feeling? I stand on the sideline. You stand right behind the play. Are you seeing the same thing I'm seeing? Yes. T'Vondre Sweat's making a difference. You heard right there. He said in the one-on-ones, when I watched the big boys do the one-on-ones yesterday, Sweat dominated. He's so big and athletic at the same time. I mean, he's got special high-end traits. So for all the amplifying of the Sweat questions that we did in the spring, it looks like right now through 2 weeks, and again, I say right now through 2 weeks, it looks like Sweat is as the Titans advertised, which is good. They drafted him. They said, we went down to Texas, and we know he's going to keep his weight in check. We know we're going to get him in shape. We know he's going to be a difference maker. We know all these things. We feel good about it. And I'm like, I mean, he better. And so far, he's answered the bell. And that's all I can go off of. But then there's the other side of this. This time last year, we were being told, granted by somebody else, but we thought Arden Key was headed to the Pro Bowl. Remember Mike Vrabel told us that Arden Key was a really, really good player in this league, and that's why after the second week, of practice, oh, no, it's not Andre Dillard who stinks. It's Arden. Arden's one of the better players in the league. Arden this, Arden that. Arden's fine. Arden's a low-end starter, high-end backup. It had nothing to do with Arden. After the second week of the season, we all realized it had nothing to do with Arden Key, and it had everything to do with the offensive player that he was going up against every day. And that's what's scaring the crap out of me. Last year in training camp, the defensive line combination of Landry, Simmons, Autry, Key, and Tart looked like an all-star team. I mean, even in Minnesota, who has a good offensive line, between Darisaw and Brad Berry and those guys that are all first-round picks in Minnesota. In Minnesota, we went there for practice, and that defensive line absolutely put their foot up the Vikings' rear end. I asked Kirk Cousins about it the next day at his press conference, and Kirk Cousins was like, yeah, they're number one against the run for a reason because that defensive line's so good. And while they were all solid last year, granted, Tart had a disappointing season, they weren't that good last year. The Titans' defensive line was fine last year. So right now, T'Vondre Sweat in practice is dominating, at least what I've seen. And yesterday, he dominated. That's a good thing, obviously. But I did tell you guys at the very beginning of training camp, I said, hey, I am not going to get too excited one way or another. I am not going to get too excited about T'Vondre Sweat because last year I got excited about Burks and Chig, and I've been excited about Marcus Johnson, and I've been excited about Chester Rogers, and I've been excited about some of these guys in training camp, and then we get out in the season, and all of a sudden it's like, oh, wait a minute, no, that's because Andre Dillard is awful, not because Arden Key is some sort of secret superstar, and the Raiders got it wrong, and San Francisco got it wrong, and Jacksonville got it wrong, and they got it right. No. But so far, so good. Hopefully, this year's different. From me getting excited about the defensive line last year, thinking they were a dominant defensive line, saying, hey, Kirk Cousins, I mean, he's going up against it. He's saying, look at these guys. They're dominant. Hopefully this year's different. And we are looking at the next Reggie White. Granted, Reggie White was roughly 100 pounds less than Sweat, but maybe we're looking at that kind of player. Albert Hainsworth. Maybe that's what we're looking at. Again, J.C. Latham let it slip yesterday that T'Vondre Sweat is 370 pounds. He said, what is he like 370? So he didn't say, hey, T Sweat got on the scale yesterday and it was 370. But I do think that's probably the ballpark we're looking at right here, which the Titans want him around 360, 355, whatever it may be. And 370 is not that. But, I mean, I remember when it came to those kind of guys, most of them are defensive tackles. And I'm talking about the nose tackle. They stop the run on first and second down. Not they're getting after the quarterback. But so far in training camp, Sweat's gotten after the quarterback. And that is a positive development. 615-737-1025 is our phone number if you want to weigh in on this. 615-737-1025 here on the program. And there's one thing I do have a hard time with when it comes to retiring the fears about T'Vondre Sweat. We'll get to that next. 615-737-1025 is our phone number at Stillman & Company, 102.5-106.3 The Game.
I mean, he's a big boy. You just gotta get your hands on him, and just look to continue to fight. I think he's a great athlete. Someone that big, who he's really good with his hands, really quick and nimble. He's not one of those sloppy bigs who just wants to bull rush every single play. He'll try to get open and get in space and make a move. So I mean, he's like 370. So when you're that big, you're a problem for anybody's unit, really, honestly.
That was J.C. Latham yesterday talking about T'Vondre Sweat. Somebody texted in before the segment and said, this was Chris in Hendersonville. What are your thoughts on Sweat after the first week of practice? Does he look like a dominant defensive lineman so far on campus? Yes. So far through 2 weeks, he looks like a dominant, big, athletic, unstoppable. I mean, he looks like a wrecking ball. Like, he's massive. And he's getting to the quarterback. And I like it. Now, the one thing I do want to just point out, nobody ever gets in trouble for something that they haven't done on this program. And so I'm not going to tell you that T'Vondre Sweat's red flags and all the things that we talked about every day before training camp. I'm not going to say that those have been problems so far, that I assume that they're going to be problems, because so far through 2 weeks, they haven't been. I think we have to remember, It's 2 weeks in training camp. Traditionally, in training camp, the rookies stay at a hotel. Their days are kind of mapped out for them. It hasn't been an everyday, you're an NFL player, here's all your money, go out there. It hasn't been that yet. And so I keep thinking about how good T'Vondre Sweat has been through the 2 weeks. When I'm there, I think T'Vondre Sweat has, quite frankly, been more dominant than Jeffrey Simmons. Now, I'm not saying he's better than Jeffrey Simmons, but he's been more dominant. But it's still only 2 weeks. They haven't even played a game yet. He hasn't had a bye week yet. Hasn't had all of that. Again, it's like this is something that at the end of the season or in the middle of the season, we can look at the red flags and we can say, okay, he really did grow up. Okay, the DUI was a one-time thing. Okay, he can keep his weight in check. Like, it's going to take some time before we can just say, okay, he's cleared that hurdle. So what I say when it comes to Sweat through the first 2 weeks, he's cleared that hurdle for now. And Trevor's not going to be on tomorrow because he's up at ESPN doing some stuff, but he'll be on later in the week. I think Trevor's going to come on Friday after the 2 padded practices this week, but before the San Francisco game. But Trevor said when they drafted him, hey, he can't play at 380 because at 380 in the NFL, they'll just run you out of the game. So we got to see if he can make it through a game before we say, oh, no, he's perfectly in shape because, again, we don't really care about practice. I mean, I know we care about practice right now, but when push comes to shove, how much do we really care about practice? Phone lines driven by WilsonCountyHunter.com, 615-737-1025. Wes in Clarksville says, I think the offensive line is just sorry. Pump the brakes on Sweat. So I think Latham is fine. Again, it's 2 weeks of practice. It's not like it's not 2 months of the season. But I think J.C. Latham looks like what I would expect a number 7 draft choice to be. If you draft a tackle with the 7th overall pick, and I don't care if it's right tackle, left tackle, whatever. If you draft a tackle with the 7th overall pick, my expectation is you should be able to start as a rookie. You won't be a Hall of Famer as a rookie, but you should start as a rookie. You should be able to hold your own, and Latham has held his own, and you should have all of the features that everybody wants in a tackle. Now, like John Ojukwu is an undrafted free agent, and he's got little tiny pencil legs. Well, that's why he's an undrafted free agent. Nicholas Teat Frere, a.k.a.
PT,
he has a first-rounder's frame, but the tape in college did not match up. That's why he went in the 3rd round, because Aiden Hutchinson absolutely ate his lunch in college. When he went up against good players, he was bad. Well, if you drafted a tackle with the 7th overall pick, he better show up right away, and he better have the feet and the legs and the arms and the butt, and he better be bigger than what you expect your tackle to be. He better be more athletic than a run-of-the-mill 4th round, 3rd round, undrafted free agent. He better be. And so far, Latham has been those things. So I think Latham right now, solid, not worried about him. Skoronski, I think, might be the opposite of Latham, which is you draft a guard with the 11th overall pick, a guard. You draft a freaking guard with the 11th overall pick, that guy better be headed to the Hall of Fame. And I'm worried about Peter. I mean, I am worried about Peter Skoronski. Cushenberry had a bad day at practice yesterday. Thought he got worked by Sweat. Now, look, maybe Sweat's Reggie White. I don't know. But he got worked by Sweat, had a bad snap. So yesterday's practice was not great. Right guard's a problem. Charles has the size, but he kind of sucks. Radens probably doesn't have the size. And as much as I'm rooting for him because he keeps getting kicked down and getting back off the mat, he kind of sucks too. Right guard's a problem. And right tackle, we all have to hope and pray that PT can be good. But look, last year, I asked Christian Fulton, during training camp. I said, have you ever been part of a defense that has been this dominant? And he looked and was like, no, not in camp. Granted, when he was in college, camp was going up against Joe Burrow. But he was like, no. Kevin Byard was saying this time last year that they thought they could have the most dominant defense in the NFL. He wasn't up there saying, yeah, in 7 weeks, I'll be in Philadelphia. And I went to Minnesota and I watched Tart and Simmons and Autry and Landry and Key. And I watched him just kick that ass. They finished 18th as a unit. The reality was we got excited in training camp watching him go up against a bad offensive line. And that very much could be a part of this too. Chris says, I'm hearing some toxic positivity. And I don't know about that, Chris. You just hear me go through the offensive line. I'm like, this guy sucked, that guy sucked. Latham, solid. Everybody else, I'm a little nervous. Caleb and Gallatin says, with last year's offensive line, do you remember any days in practice where you thought they played better than the D-line? I feel like I've heard more positive this year compared to last year's offensive line, which should be a good sign. Well, J.C. Latham is better than anything the Titans had last year, which is not saying much. But going back to it last year, I don't know if I can think of a day where the offensive line had anything positive go their way. I remember Arden Key was at the podium one day, and I asked Arden Key, and you got to remember, Arden Key is the biggest trash talker on the team. Although Josh Wiley has been talking a lot of trash at training camp. But I asked Arden Key, I said, you guys have really dominated the offensive line. Have you been a part of that in practice before? I think it was the same day I asked Fulton, and Fulton's like, no, I haven't been that dominant in practice. I asked Arden Key about how the defensive line dominated the offensive line, and Arden Key was like, I don't think it's been that way. I think it's been pretty even. And I was like, oh, God, the pity when the biggest trash talker on the team is like, no, they're good, Jared, trust me. It's like, oh, God, they really, really blow. Like, that's how I felt about the O-line. I haven't felt that way this year, but I'm also not saying that I'm ruling it out of the realm of possibility. One texter says, why does Skoronski scare you? I thought him moving to guard full-time would be a positive. Well, Brian Callahan was on the NFL Network yesterday, and he was just pumping those tires up. When it came to Skoronski, oh, my God, he looked great. He's been this, he's that. I think Peter looks kind of like a lug, like the same old lug that he looked like last year at times, most of the time. He got turnstiled yesterday. You know that where the guard kind of gets turned and you see the guard's arms go flying as his body is late to catch up and somebody runs right by him? I saw that yesterday, and I did not know who the defensive lineman that did that to Peter, I did not know who that was. And that was the same problem last year. There's too many times I saw Peter, and about midway through last year, not after the appendectomy, but well after that, I said, I'm worried. I'm worried about Skoronski. And when I said I was worried about Skoronski, a lot of people got mad. And they were like, you don't know what you're talking about, Jared. And so what I've decided is, I do think I know what I'm talking about. And with Peter, I had hoped, okay, better left tackle, better center, better line coach. He's gained some weight because he knows he's a guard, because finally the Titans have a coach who has the balls to get up there and say he's a guard, as opposed to the last guy that was like, I don't have to tell you what position he's going to play. So that'll be better. I haven't really seen it. I'm concerned. I'll just leave it at that. 615-737-1025 is our phone number, 615-737-1025. We'll get back to your phones. We'll do that next here on the program. Let's talk a little Window Nation. That's right. I love Window Nation. They are the company that I trust when it comes to window replacement. And the reason that I trust Window Nation is because they came out to my home. And I knew right then and there when they showed up, I knew I'm going to buy some new windows. Ian, I swear, I thought I was buying new windows.
Sure.
And I told them, I said, okay, what windows do we need? And they said, you do not need new windows. And I said, that is a trustable company right there. I can't tell you about the other window companies. I can only tell you about Window Nation and that they are a reliable, trustable company. Trevor used them because I'm like, Trevor, I trust this company. And right now, it's Window Nation's anniversary sale. So buy 2 windows, get 2 free, plus pay nothing for 24 months and get an extra $250 credit right then and there. So again, you buy 2 windows, you get 2 windows free. It's pretty good, right? You also don't have to pay right away, so you can save up a little bit and get an extra $250 credit. Hurry now because the sale ends August 31st. So schedule an in-home estimate at 866-90-NATION or at windownation.com. That's 866-90-NATION, windownation.com.
But what are you seeing from him? I just feel like he's blowing people up right now.
Well, I think we're seeing why they were so giddy to get him. I mean, I'm impressed with how quickly he's playing himself into shape. He's on the field. The helmet isn't coming up all the time like it did in the first practice. And I watch him not for the first snap, but for the second, the third, and the fourth. And he continues to explode off the ball. And I was there Sunday and I watched him push Cushenberry 5 yards deep into the backfield. And you're just like, wow. I mean, because Cushenberry's a big, strong guy. And, if he can be that, he's going to cause a lot of problems for a lot of people. And often we talk about, guys with where they're drafted well, like Peter Skoronski. Peter Skoronski, for where he was drafted, needs to be a dominant player. I think we all agree on that. I think Peter would agree on that. Peter wants to be a dominant player regardless of where he was drafted. Well, right now, if you told me Sweat was the 20th pick of the draft, I'd be like, all right, because he's massive and he's impressive. And, I know he had the misstep before the draft, but he has not been a distraction for this team at all through training camp.
That was Corey Curtis earlier today on Robbie and Rexroad, and I can't disagree with anything he said right there. The one thing I do wonder about Sweat that we don't know about, because practice is different than in the games, is can he play on third down? Can he play in the fourth quarter? So, and again, I don't know the answer to this. I'm not saying he can't. I'm just saying I don't know that. When you draft a guy 38th overall, he needs to be on the field on third down. He needs to be on the field in the fourth quarter, in the 2-minute drill. When we talk about these scary good quarterbacks getting the football, I mean, let's just think week 2. Titans are up 21-19 with 2 minutes and 18 seconds left, and the Jets have 2 timeouts, and Aaron Rodgers is getting the football. Does T'Vondre Sweat go back on that field on first down, knowing that when Aaron checks it down to Breece Hall and they gain 7 yards on first down, they're running up to the line of scrimmage, and Sweat's going to have to stay on. You can't substitute. Can he on second and third down, or if they convert a first down, and can he get to the quarterback on the 4th play of that drive? And I don't know the answer to that. And again, I'm not saying he can't. I'm saying that those are the things that are yet to be determined before we sit there and, again, fit him for a gold jacket. But I will tell you this, Ian. Right now, when it comes to T'Vondre Sweat,
yeah,
I say let's get him a spot next to Chig Okonkwo and Treylon Burks in the practice Hall of Fame.
Okay.
Because he certainly is a practice Pro Bowler. Now let's see in the games.
Sure.
And again, I'm not saying, I don't want people to hear me say like, oh, he's doing this in practice, but he hasn't done it in the games. Let's see if he can do it again. I know people are like, you hater. Well, let's see. I'm not ruling it out.
I wonder if it transfers like defensive line work in practice, you know, how much that transfers in a game compared to some of the skilled positions.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know that, but
I'm thinking Sweat has the ability to beat Quinnen Williams. And Quinnen Williams had 12 sacks 2 years ago. Like, I don't think he's Chris Jones. Like, he doesn't move like Chris Jones. Chris Jones is a DT/D end.
he does feel more like a D end playing DT.
Talking about Jones?
Yeah.
Yeah. Jones moves all over the place. Simmons should be what Jones is. Which, by the way, I do have a bone to pick.
Their body types are a little different. I feel like Jones is a little taller and leaner, but I could be wrong.
Bone to pick with the Titans. Everybody over there was talking today or yesterday about Simmons, you know, and it was like, oh, yeah, I think it was Latham's like, well, he's the best in the game. No, he had 5.5 sacks last year. Like, I understand he threw a pissing contest last week and the Titans are going to stand by their guy, and I don't have a problem with that. But let's not lie. Like, let's not say Will Levis is the best in the game when we know he's not. Simmons is not the best in the game. One texter says, all these guys are proving you wrong with your negative takes over and over. Is it possible, texter says, that Rand Carthon is actually cooking and not all incompetent like you called him over and over for a week? Is it possible? Yeah. That's why we'll play the games. Again, I'm not saying Sweat can't be the guy they drafted him to be. But it's 2 weeks, and it's practice. You know, if Sweat decides to go partying, you know, during Labor Day weekend, knock on wood, you know, and then all of a sudden something happens a la Isaiah Wilson, then does that take all of that back? I don't know. So let's see Sweat do it. You know, he's coming in with a strike or 2 strikes or whatever you want to say. He's coming down in the count. Well, let's get through the at-bat before we go ahead and name him Ken Griffey Jr. And when it comes to the moves they've made, you know, when it's like, is it possible Rand's cooking? Yeah, it's possible Rand's cooking. It's also possible that Jamal Adams is going to play 4 games this year. It's also possible they don't have a right tackle. So let's not get carried away one way or the other. And again, I don't back down on my criticisms of Rand Carthon. Last year, he even said in that horrendous press conference, the ball didn't bounce our way press conference, he even said, my name's on this team. Like, I'm a part of this 6-win team. So the Andre Dillard stuff, and that's on his ledger. Now, look, everybody makes mistakes. Floyd drafted Bryant Mix in the second round of a draft. So it happens. But let's let these things play out before we do. See, Jared. See. Texter says, Skoronski is one of Vrabel's parting gifts to this team, so it would not surprise me if he never proved worthy of the 11th pick. Vrabel is not a good coach and an even worse talent scout. So if somebody's not good, it's Vrabel's fault. But if they are good, it's Ram. And to me, that I don't do that. I don't do that at all. One texter says, what do we make of the fact that these have been softer practices? We talk about T'Vondre Sweat is making it through practice. We talk about what Corey Curtis said about how T'Vondre Sweat has not been lifting his helmet for heavy breathing, but have the practices not been softer? So Brian Callahan made a comment yesterday that stood out to me, that I do think that there is something that is, kind of true with this, which is he was like, now it really feels like training camp. Talking about the 2 days with the pads this weekend. They practiced on Tuesday and Wednesday in pads, off Thursday, no pads conditioning Friday, pads Saturday, pads Sunday. I can see that, hey, it takes a couple of days, takes a couple of classes before we get into the curriculum, right? The first day is the teacher sits you down, hands you the syllabus, sets expectations, on your way for the rest of the day. No homework. But tomorrow, we're starting the class. That's kind of been what practice has been like to a certain extent. And so I do think that there has been a ramp up in intensity as far as practice was concerned from what I saw on Sunday compared to what I had seen before that without the pads, what I had seen on Tuesday and Wednesday with the pads, and what I had seen the first week where they weren't even throwing the ball deep. And even in OTAs, I thought that the intensity of the practices was less than a Vrabel practice. I felt like yesterday's practice was fairly intense. One texter says, you talk about the offensive line going through position by position, but it only takes one offensive lineman to make them all look bad. Just ask Skoronski. Dillard made him look bad last year. Again, we're going to figure out whether or not Skoronski can play this year. I mean, look, I don't want to pick on Skoronski. I don't want us to all put our hands in the middle and make a promise here. But everybody made every excuse in the book for him. Maybe they're valid, maybe they're not. I don't know. Had guys that sucked playing by him, had an appendectomy, had a bad offensive line coach. They yanked him around positions. Well, they didn't really yank him. I mean, they drafted him and put him at guard. But he gained weight this year because he knows he's a guard. But if Skoronski doesn't do it this year, then we know. So I'm not here for the excuses. I'm here to see him play better. And so far in camp, not completely sold on. I think it's going to be a challenge. So when it comes to one guy letting the whole offensive line down, yeah, that's real. But I do think they're markedly better at left tackle, though it would have been very difficult for them to not be better at left tackle. Everything else, I mean, surely they'll be better at center. I know Cushenberry didn't have a good day yesterday, but surely they'll be better at center than they were with Brewer. But yes. Alex says, God forbid the Titans play their starters in the preseason, but what happens if they play Levis in the preseason and he goes down with an ACL? What do? Bring back Tannehill? So I don't know if this question is hey, Jared, we always talk through the scenarios, during the draft. We say, well, what if Caleb Williams falls to the Titans when we know Caleb Williams is not going to do it? But you have to be prepared in case it happens, like we've seen guys fall in the past. Levis, an example of a guy who fell that nobody thought would. Well, I'm not going to get into what you do if something happens to Levis because, again, Tannehill's out there and he'll be out there if something happens to Levis on Saturday. But Floyd told me a story when he was with the Patriots. And they did this drill called a ball safety drill with the quarterbacks. So Brady and Ryan Mallett and Brian Hoyer and Kevin O'Connell, who was a quarterback at the time, those guys would go through the drill, and the defensive lineman, like Vince Wilfork, would be swiping at the ball, trying to knock the ball loose. And it was a quarterback's job to hang on to the ball. So Brady's got his right hand, his throwing hand exposed, and he's got Wilfork and all these guys just ripping right at the ball. And Floyd went to Bill, and he said, are you sure we should be doing this? You know, should we not put the ball in Tommy's left hand just, so we're not swiping at Tom Brady? We don't break Tom Brady's hand. Bill looked at him and said, can't play football scared. And that's how I feel about playing in the preseason. If Will Levis goes out there and he gets hurt in the preseason, I'm not going to blame Brian Callahan because you can't play football scared. I don't blame Mike Vrabel for the fact that Harold Landry tore his ACL in training camp a couple of years ago. It's not his fault. But what are you supposed to do? Not practice anybody? Not play anybody? I don't believe in that. And I believe not playing in the preseason has hurt this football team each of the last 3 years. So I say play them. 615-737-1025 is our phone number. I do have a thought on the Olympics. Well, I do have two. I want to get to them, and we'll do it next. Stillman and Company, 1025, 106 The Game.
As you crossed the finish line and you looked up and the results were revealed, what was the feeling?
I'm going to be honest. I was shocked. I thought I got out-leaned, truly. And me and Cushenberry were right next to each other, and I was like, I'm going to have to swallow my pride on this one. I'm going to be honest. And I said, I think you had that one. And then my name came up, and I was like, oh, shoot, I'm incredible.
It has been 20 years since an American won the Olympic gold medal. Just think about that step you've made for history.
Man, it's an amazing moment. You know, my coach, Lance Brahman, Coach Tyson Gay, the second fastest human ever to live. And he wasn't even able to get an Olympic medal. And I think about that a lot as I go through these Olympics because I have two. These are like the hardest fought medals I've ever had to do. You know, I came out here in the first round and I underestimated it. And I said, never again. I'm going to come out here with the intention to win every round. And, you know, even though I didn't get the win in the semis, all that matters is the last one.
Noah Lyles. And all I want to say after that photo finish yesterday where, I don't know if you saw this, but the Jamaican guy, Thompson, his foot was ahead of the line and Noah Lyles' body crossed the line first. And it's when the torso crosses the line in the 100 meter that it matters. And all I got to say to that is USA, USA, USA. I'm not one of you crybabies that said after the opening ceremonies, I'm not going to watch. No, I'm rooting for the USA. That's my country. That's my team. Go USA. But you have a couple Olympic thoughts. First, on the Noah Lyles winning the 100 meter yesterday by 0.005 seconds. Amazing. I thought it was amazing. I did not know the rule because normally people don't win by that little of a margin. But Ian, can I tell you the one thing that really bothered me about all of us here in America celebrating Noah Lyles?
What's that?
If the shoe was on the other foot, this country would be bitching about that rule. I know how this country is. And I feel strongly that if Jamaica had won, because it's not the foot, it's the torso, there'd be a lot of boo-hooing about an Olympic rule that, again, I didn't know about until yesterday. Did you know this rule?
No, I don't think I knew all the specifics, no.
And so, but I feel like that's what America has become. In America, if we don't like the result nowadays, we blame the rule. We say, well, that was a stupid rule. We should have won. It's like the rule is the rule. And they, talking about Noah Lyles and the Team USA coaches and everybody out there, I would assume everybody knows the rules before they start competition. And if you don't know the rules before you start competition, that's your fault. But instead, people are like, if they don't like the result, they blame the jurisdiction. And I don't know when we started doing that in America, when we stopped kind of putting our hand up and saying, yeah, that was the rule and it is what it is. I remember years ago in the World Baseball Classic, which is kind of like the World Cup for baseball, but it's really not because it doesn't have the juice. And I remember we got eliminated by Canada, or maybe Canada got eliminated by us. But Canada beat us, but they got eliminated because there was some kind of, qualifying rule per round, per whatever. And I remember when they said afterwards, they asked the Canadian players, man, you beat America, but America goes on and you don't go on. And the Canadian players said, yeah, but we knew what the rules were when we went into this. We knew what the rule was. That's the rule. It's like if, somebody gets arrested for something, it's like, well, I don't like that law. Well, that's the law. And granted, I think there are a lot of stupid rules in sports, and I think there are a lot of stupid laws, and yet those are the law. That's the law. That's the rule. I think it's stupid that if a ball goes out of the back of the end zone in the NFL, they put the ball on the 20-yard line, they give it to the other team. I think it's stupid. And yet, I mean, that's the rule, right? Like if the Titans get into the Super Bowl and, and let's hope this happens. I will take this happening if it means the Titans get to the Super Bowl. Let's say the Titans get to the Super Bowl and Tajay Spears tries to put the ball out over the goal line and somebody punches it out and goes out of the back of the end zone. Well, what are we going to say? Like, oh, it wasn't fair. The rule in the NFL is so stupid. No, we know what the rule is. It is what it is. So that's how I feel about that. Secondly, I think everybody that bitched about Simone Biles a couple of years ago, they need to shut up because she's awesome. And then I got to tell you, and I don't want to go down this road because I don't care that much. Some people will say, you're weak for not wanting to go down this road and stand for what's right. But it's not that I don't have thoughts on this whole transgender athlete in women's sports kind of thing, because I do have my own thoughts on it. But I just don't care enough to hear you yell at me about my thoughts. But can I just say this? That Algerian boxer, I mean, I thought just based off of Twitter, and I guess Pat McAfee, I thought that was actually a transgendered athlete. Like, I thought that was a man who was a man that switched to being a woman that was boxing in the Olympics. Then I find out, no, she was born a woman. I'm like, so what's the big deal? Like, that happens. It is what it is. Like, we're not all born the same. And some of us are born with more testosterone than others. Some of us are born with more estrogen than others. Like, if the person's not actually transgender, then how can you be mad about it? So those are my Olympic thoughts right there. And again, I don't want to go down the road of discussing the transgender athlete stuff. Like, I don't, because my feelings on it are probably going to piss off half the people, or probably like 30% of the people. But still, like, I don't care enough. But if you're going to tell me that Algerian boxer shouldn't be allowed to fight when she was born a woman and she is a woman, like, sorry, no, she fights. Go, good luck. It is what it is. One texter says, didn't know that was the rule, but it makes sense that the runners lean when they cross the finish line. Agreed. By the way, one other Olympic thought I have. I don't care about basketball. Ian, have you watched any basketball?
I mean, a little bit, but not a ton.
We win every game by 100, so that's not interesting.
Yeah, maybe once it gets to like the medal stuff.
And they took, Caitlin Clark, they didn't take her. So men's basketball, women's basketball, I haven't watched a second of Olympic basketball. Not 1 second. And I'll be okay with that. But again, go USA. 615-737-1025 is our phone number, 615-737-1025 if you want to weigh in. The Titans have added Quandre Diggs. And I think it's the right move. I think it's a smart move. I agree with it. I am thankful that the Titans woke up and they smelled the coffee and they made the move. But some of you guys are getting carried away. We'll get to that next. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook Live. We are live from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios. So let me say this. Good on the Titans for making the Quandre Diggs signing. They had a hole at safety. Elijah Molden is not a starting safety. Jamal Adams is always hurt. It's okay to admit that they did not have a starting safety, and they went out and they signed a guy who played 17 games last year, 17 games the years before that, 17 games the year before that, and 16 games when we played 16 games the year before that. It was good, and it was a good deal. 1 year, $3 million, and make $2 extra more in incentives. I think it's a good deal. You know me. I do not believe in the salary cap. So the idea of, $3 million is fine. So I think it's a good move. And I appreciate the Titans smelling the coffee for once, which they haven't done over the last couple of years. They go into training camp with some Scarbini at a position they think they can fudge it, and then they decide, oh, no, it'll be okay. And then that's how Malik Willis ends up at quarterback on Sunday Night Football. When you don't actually watch what happens in practice, or you don't actually watch what they do in the preseason games, then it's easy to, oh, no, it'll be fine. And then it's a problem. So I give them credit for that. But let's not get carried away. Yesterday, I was on Twitter, and I saw after the Titans signed Quandre Diggs, all these Titan fans saying, we have an elite secondary. We have one of the best secondaries in the NFL. Adam Schefter tweeted, think about all the additions on defense with Chidobe Awuzie and L'Jarius Sneed and Jamal Adams and Quandre Diggs and Denard Wilson. And this is, how could you not be excellent with all of this? And I'm like, hold your horses. The Titans secondary is solid, which is better than what it could have been. It's not elite. There is a difference between solid and elite. We all know this. Benji Olsen played right guard for 10 years. The guy almost never missed a game. We never complained about him. But he wasn't Bruce Matthews. There's a difference. And solid in the NFL can win you a lot of games. But again, the Titans fans after the Diggs signing were fired up about this elite secondary, which sounds good, but the problem is they're not elite. In fact, I think this is like the 2018 Titans secondary. That secondary featured Logan Ryan, who had won a Super Bowl in New England, who had won 2 Super Bowls, I should say, in New England. Malcolm Butler, who was the hero of the Super Bowl in New England and was an all-pro, #1 corner in New England. Everything L'Jarius Sneed, everything you think he is, Malcolm Butler was in New England. Adoree Jackson, a young player on the rise, had a solid rookie year. He was in that mix too. Kevin Byard, a first-team all-pro safety who had led the NFL in interceptions, and Kenny Vaccaro. Kenny Vaccaro is a very good player. They ranked 6th against the pass, which is pretty good. But elite is the Legion of Boom. Richard Sherman, Brandon Browner, Cam Chancellor, Earl Thomas. 3 of those guys are probably headed to the Hall of Fame. That's elite. Ed Reed and Chris McAllister in Baltimore. That's elite. Champ Bailey, Ronnie Lott, Deion Sanders. That's elite. The Titans don't have Deion Sanders. They don't have Earl Thomas. And it's okay to admit that. Let's not kid ourselves. Let's not look at a good thing, the Quandre Diggs signing, and let's not get carried away. There's a reason he was on the market and ended up signing for $3 million. Kevin Byard, and most of you guys last year thought Kevin Byard sucked. I mean, the amount of people that went out on Twitter and they said, oh my God, Rand fleeced Howie Roseman with a 5th and a 6th round pick. Woo! A 5th and a 6th round pick. So the amount of people around here, because again, this is a Titan fan thing to do. You love him when he's on your team. Then they get rid of him like Vrabel. Get rid of him. It's, he sucks. But Titans fans think Kevin Byard sucks. Kevin Byard signed for $7.5 million a year and got a $3 million signing bonus before free agency even opened. Chicago wanted to sign Byard as opposed to waiting for the market and seeing who is still available and then signing Quandre Diggs or Marcus May or Justin Simmons or one of these others. They had circled Byard and said, we want this guy. And everybody around here thought he sucked. And so don't give me this bull crap that, Kevin Byard sucks, but now your secondary is elite because you signed a $3 million safety to go along with the other safety you signed for the league minimum because the guy is always hurt. To go along with your other safety who was fine, I guess, as Kevin Byard's Robin. And also doesn't play all the games. 9 games for Hooker 2 years ago, 13 games for Hooker last year. If you were to go around and say, hey, what do you think of Quandre Diggs, Jamal Adams, and Amani Hooker? People look at you and go, okay. Adams always hurt. He's not what he used to be 5 years ago. Diggs is an older veteran safety, solid player. And Hooker, he's fine. He's never healthy. Think about this. Green Bay paid a safety like $17 million a year. Tampa Bay is paying Winfield a fortune to play safety. Combined, you're paying your guys about $10 million. Is it really that elite? So am I happy about the Diggs signing? Yeah, I'm happy about the Diggs signing. I think Diggs is a solid player. And again, I think Diggs is a legitimate starter in the NFL. This is not one of these, hey, let's talk ourselves into somebody who sucks because we don't want to spend the money on somebody who's good. So now we're trying to tell ourselves that Jack Gibbons is a starter. He's not. We're not trying to talk ourselves anymore and Elijah Molden into being a starter because he's not. Right now, the Titans have a right guard, whoever it ends up being. Charles, Radens, Brunskill, none of those guys are NFL starters. They're backups. So at least the Titans signed somebody who they can look at and they can say, hey, this guy is a legitimate starting safety and he can come in here right away. But Titans fans, at least the ones on Twitter, cannot just accept that. All of a sudden, it has to be, we have an elite secondary. We have a top 3 secondary in the NFL. No, you don't. You do not have a top 3 safety or top 3 secondary in the NFL. I'd argue the Texans with Stingley and Petrie, and I'd argue the Texans already have a better secondary than you, and they're in your own division. That's before we get to other teams that actually do have elite secondaries. The Titans have had elite secondaries in the past with guys like Samari Rolle and Blaine Bishop and Marcus Robertson and Cortland Finnegan and Chris Hope. I mean, this is not that. L'Jarius Sneed, when he's healthy, if he's healthy, we'll see. L'Jarius Sneed's an elite player. He's the only one. Awuzie's fine. McCreary is on the ascent. Adams is certainly on the decline. Diggs probably a little bit on the decline. And again, Hooker's league average. It's okay. I know. We all want to think we're the best. But Quandre Diggs at $3 million, you think all of a sudden is like pumping Ed Reed in his prime onto your football team? Get a freaking clue. You think these safeties you have are better than the Kevin Byard that you had in 2019? Get a clue. But nobody wants that. Again, everybody wants to sit there and say, this is the best, and I'm going to be the bad guy for pointing out that, again, it's solid. Solid's good. If I told you right now that the offensive line would be solid, we'd all take it in a heartbeat. If I told you that the tight ends would be solid, and I don't think they are, but if I told you they'd be solid, you'd take it in a heartbeat. I think the running back room between Spears and Pollard, solid. It's not what it used to be with Derrick Henry, and not one person here is arguing that. That's what safety is. That's what corner is here. It's solid. It's good. Great. That's fine. The end. But no, it's got to be, oh, we're so good, Jared, you see. Okay, we'll see. Because the number one pick's week 1, and Aaron Rodgers is week 2, and a $55 million quarterback's week 3, and a $53 million quarterback's week 4, even though he blows. So we shall see. But I don't see this and think elite. And I think if you do think you see elite, I think you lost your mind. 615-737-1025 is our phone number, 615-737-1025. I have not heard what Joe said, but Ian gave me a description of what Joe said about this Titan secondary. And apparently, I have to think this is off the rails, if it's what it sounds like. But I haven't listened to it, so I can't say it. So we'll listen to it together. We'll do it next. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. So I have not heard this audio. Again, I think the Titans secondary is solid. Solid. I compare it to 2018. I think Snead equals Butler. Well, again, 2018, the Titans had a secondary of Logan Ryan, Adoree Jackson, Malcolm Butler, Kevin Byard, Kenny Vaccaro. Right now, the Titans have a secondary of, and we'll throw Adams in here, but, he'll probably be hurt. The Titans have a secondary of Snead, Awuzie, McCreary, Adams, Hooker, and Quandre Diggs, who they signed yesterday.
You don't think Snead's better than Butler?
Well, at this point, they're both two-time Super Bowl champions. Malcolm Butler was an AP All-Pro, first team. Snead hasn't even been to a Pro Bowl. So wouldn't the nod have to go to Butler?
I don't know. That's a good question. I mean, how much do we really care about Pro Bowls these days?
They're both number one corners on Super Bowl champions. And there is no arguing the impact of those two players for their Super Bowls. I mean, I think with Butler, I think the impact, you go back to the one where Belichick wouldn't play him. And I think there are a lot of people that still hold that against Belichick. And I think they probably win that game if Malcolm Butler plays. So I think you have to say Butler over Snead or Butler equal to Snead, but you can't say Snead over Butler.
That's close.
I say equal. I think Awuzie and Logan Ryan are equal. Veterans that know what to do, that have been there, done that, but they're not superstars. Fair?
Okay.
I think that Adoree Jackson and Roger McCreary, again, at that point, Adoree had 1 year under his belt. McCreary's got 2.
Probably pretty close.
They're both on the rise. And, okay, I think Byard's better. That Kevin Byard
was good.
Better than any of the safeties they have right now.
Probably, yeah.
And I think Kenny Vaccaro was probably better than any of the safeties that they have right now. So it's hard for me not to say that 2018 was better than this year.
Yeah, so it's close.
Apparently, here's what I've not heard this. I've heard a description of this. This is what Joe Rexroad said this morning about the Titans secondary after adding Quandre Diggs for $3 million.
First of all, I think it's clear. I think it maybe was before, but now, I mean, this is easily the most accomplished secondary in Tennessee Titans history. I would say, I'd just go ahead and just guess that it would be the most accomplished secondary in franchise history. I can't really remember. I mean, I know the Oilers have, had some good players over the years and all that, but not necessarily great players in the secondary that I can recall. I mean, this is, of course, a lot of these guys are past their prime. Diggs is among them. Adams also. But, you're talking about two guys highly decorated, especially, I mean, it wasn't long ago at all that Diggs was a Pro Bowler, 2 years ago.
Yep.
So I think this is the ad that now you may alter the starting lineup. I think with Adams, like we've talked about, I think he's going to be a factor in there if he's healthy, and I think he can help them in some ways potentially. But I never really bought him as a starting full-time safety. I do Diggs.
Okay. So, and I agree with the second part about like Diggs is a starter, and I'm fine with that. Again, Diggs kind of has that Vaccaro feel to it. The most accomplished secondary in franchise history. See, this is, and I love Joe with all my heart. We had a great time this weekend. As we had a little celebration for Caroline. Joe was the one who set it all up. Had a great time with Joe. I love Joe. But this is where Joe does one of these things where Joe reminds all of us that he's been here for 7 years and that anything that happened before the day that Joe Rexroad showed up, he does not know about. I remember this when he was talking about Vandy basketball, and he was talking about Vandy basketball was never that big of a deal in town unless, once we got pro sports. I'm like, Joe, when I was a senior in high school, Vandy had Shane Foster, and they played UT, who was number 1 in the country, and it was the number 1 story on SportsCenter, and not one person I knew back then was talking about the Predators. Not one person. This is another example of that. The most accomplished secondary in Titans history. Really? More accomplished than the secondary with Pro Bowler Chris Hope, Pro Bowler Cortland Finnegan, Pro Bowler Michael Griffin, and Super Bowl champion Nick Harper more accomplished? Really? More accomplished than All-Pro Samari Roll, All-Pro Blaine Bishop, Marcus Robertson, and Denard Walker that had the number one defense in 2000, the year that the Ravens set an NFL scoring record. And again, let's go through it because it's top of mind. At that point in time, when they started the 2018 season, I do not know if Kenny Vaccaro or Logan Ryan ever made Pro Bowls. I don't think they did. And I don't think Logan Ryan ever made one. But I do think winning the Super Bowl has to count for something, right? Like, it is a check when you're part of a Super Bowl winner. That is 2018. That team had 2 All-Pros, Butler and Byard. Both had been All-Pros. This year, 2 All-Pros, Adams, period. 1 All-Pro. I think I'm getting ahead of myself.
Yeah, no Pro Bowls for Logan Ryan.
Okay. Was Diggs an All-Pro?
Quandre Diggs? No, just 3 Pro Bowls.
Just Pro Bowls. Okay.
3, yeah.
So that 2018 had 2 All-Pros. Byard was an All-Pro. And remember, that's when Deion Sanders said that he sucked. And, Deion said, you just stay the fans and I'll stay the man or whatever. So 2 All-Pros. This has 1 All-Pro. That secondary had 2 Super Bowl champions, Butler and Ryan. This has 1, Snead. I'm sorry. I don't think it's close. I really don't. Again, if the All-Pro, the only All-Pro they have is Jamal Adams, and that was an eon ago. Whereas, again, Byard was coming off of it that year, and Butler, I think, was the year before. On paper, going into the year, 18 was a better secondary than this one. And unless you think 3 guys are going to make it this year to the Pro Bowl, then it's not on par with Chris Hope, Cortland Finnegan, and Michael Griffin all making it to the Pro Bowl in a year that Michael Griffin had 7 picks, Cortland Finnegan had 5, and Chris Hope had 4. So, and the disappointing part about Joe's take is that Joe was here in 2018 when they had Ryan, Butler, Jackson, Byard, and Vaccaro. Unbelievable. Woof. That's a doozy. But that's how the Titan fans are talking right now. It's like, we've got an elite secondary, Jared. I'm like, you've got a solid secondary. Solid's good. Best in franchise history. What a joke. Best in franchise history. Give me a Joe.
We said most accomplished.
I'm going to rip his. If this secondary is not that good this year, I'm going to every day. I'm never going to let this go. That's embarrassing. That is embarrassing. Most accomplished. They got 1 All-Pro, period. Jamal Adams 5 years ago or 6 years ago. That's your 1. Who else made the All-Pro team that year? Who else was an All-Pro in 2018, the year that Jamal Adams was an All-Pro? I mean, was Earl Thomas an All-Pro that year? Was Ronnie
Bobby
Lott?
Wagner was.
Bobby Wagner. And if the Titans brought in Bobby Wagner to play safety, would we be sitting here celebrating that they got Bobby Wagner, who is as old as Methuselah right now?
Stephon Gilmore, Patrick Peterson, Khalil Mack, Von Miller.
Let's go through again. Let's go through this list of each guy here.
Okay.
The defense. So this is a 2018 All-Pro defense.
That's right.
Okay, give it to me.
Okay, J.J. Watt.
Retired.
Khalil Mack.
Took a pay cut.
Danielle Hunter.
Nah, he's still pretty good.
Okay, Aaron Donald.
Retired.
Fletcher Cox.
Retired.
Luke Kuechly.
Retired.
Bobby Wagner.
Old.
They put Khalil Mack in that category. Von Miller. Shaq.
Took a pay cut.
Shaq Leonard. Or I guess I don't know. Did he change his name? The linebacker from the Colts?
Retired.
Fuller, Chicago.
Fuller. Is he
Kyle
still around?
Fuller.
I think he's still around.
He might still be around.
He was an all-pro?
Yep. Stephon Gilmore.
Old. Doesn't have a team.
Patrick Peterson.
Old.
Eddie Jackson.
I don't think he has a team. I think he got cut.
I thought he just maybe signed somewhere. But yeah. Let's see. Derwin James. Jamal Adams. And I guess, yeah, there you go.
Joe Rexroad saying this is the most accomplished secondary in franchise history. When he covered the 2018 team that had 2 All-Pros on it and had 2 Super Bowl champions, and again, a young corner on the rise. Jackson was a young corner on the rise. McCreary's a young corner on the rise. It's, again, Titan fans, stop overestimating good things. It's bad enough when I have to deal with you trying to convince me that a bad thing is not a bad thing. That bothers me. But when you take a thing that's solid, like your receivers are solid, they're not great, and you start telling me all of a sudden you think you've got the greatest show on turf, Rams, I got a problem with it. And Joe, who, again, he's, I'm not a fan. He should know better. 615-737-1025 to your phones. 615-737-1025. Stillman and Company, 1025, 106 for the game.
I was actually there, talking to some of the personnel people, some of the coaches yesterday. Seemed like the defense is pretty set. Maybe just kind of had one little hole. They filled that last night after I landed. Thank you very much. Quandre Diggs, one of the old dudes, one of the veterans who is still available, really one of the best overall players who is still a free agent, agreed to terms on a one-year deal worth $5 million max. Basically, it is a $4 million base deal, $3 million base plus another $1 million in easily reachable playtime incentives. If you're wondering why at this point in camp the Titans need another safety after signing Jamal Adams, the reason is with Denard Wilson in a scheme, they're basically trying to replicate what Baltimore did last year. That's the scheme they are running, and they had 3 safeties who were on the field a ton. Guys who play a lot, who make a lot of plays, are sort of that nerve center of the defense. Quandre Diggs is a really cerebral kind of elder statesman. Felt like he was one of the final pieces of what should be a really, really feisty defense. Rarely do you find good, talented people at this time in training camp, but for sure yesterday, the Tennessee Titans did.
Do we really think this is going to be like a great defense this year? Like, again, I don't want it to sound like a complainer because, even Chase texted me and he was like, what are you mad about? I was like, I'm mad about the fact that Joe is pretending like this secondary is all of a sudden, the Ravens of the 2000s with Rod Woodson and Chris McAllister and Ed Reed and all those guys. Like, I mean, come on, it's ridiculous. And so on and so forth. And then, I hear that Ian Rappaport thing. And again, let's not kid ourselves. We know Ian Rappaport went out to practice. He was buddy-buddy with everybody. And when you're buddy-buddy with everybody, they all, they say nice things about you. And so on and so forth. And yet, I'm just like, it's a solid secondary.
If they stay healthy, I think this defense could be kind of good.
Who's going to sack the quarterback?
But that's their one glaring hole is the outside, other than Landry.
Okay, let's get to your phones as promised. 615-737-1025. And our phone lines are driven by WilsonCountyHunter.com. One texter says, what is Joe wrong about? The most accomplished secondary we've had isn't wrong. Multiple Super Bowls and all-pro corners and safeties. First off, 1 all-pro. And it was Jamal Adams 6 years ago. And 1 guy is a Super Bowl champion. Again, 2018 had more all-pros and more Super Bowl champions. So it's hard for me to get excited about that. I replied to the texter and I said, what corner is an all-pro? And he said that the texter thought that Chidobe Awuzie was a second-team all-pro. Is that true? You're telling me that L'Jarius Sneed has never been an all. He was not. So no, none of these corners have been all pros. End of the story. One texter says, Adoree Jackson was not a corner on the rise. Butler and Ryan were good, but not their top selves. Read off the stats of every wide receiver covered last year when Kansas City played them. He is an all-pro, title or not. Awuzie is as good as Logan Ryan. Roger is light years better than Adoree. This secondary can be top 5 this year. What are you trying to compare them against all-time secondaries? Okay. So, again, let me ask this question. This guy says that Adoree Jackson, after his first year in the NFL, was not a starting corner on the rise. Do you agree with that or disagree with that, Ian?
After 1 year, I don't know. It was a little bit mixed with Adoree, but I think it was more rise than fall.
I don't think there's any difference between what we think of Jackson and what we think of McCreary. Does anybody here think McCreary's an all-pro? No. Do we think he's a solid, young corner who's getting better? That's what I think. That's what we thought of Adoree Jackson. Adoree Jackson, I think, started every game as a rookie. Now, the punt returning was a disaster, but that doesn't have to do with safety. And again, I love to read off the stats of what L'Jarius needed. Again, Malcolm Butler was a first-team all-pro. L'Jarius Sneed's never been that. We can't say, the all-pro, that matters, but it matters for Jamal Adams, but it doesn't matter for Malcolm Butler. You can't say that. Kevin Byard led the league in interceptions the year before that, 2018. You can't say that.
Adoree had 0 picks his rookie year, 2 his second. year.
If you had asked me, did Adoree ever pick off a pass as a Titan? I'm not sure I could have.
He had 2. But he started 16 games, 13 games, 10 games, and then he got hurt. Only started 2. And
then he and Vrabel hated each other, and
yeah,
it went from there. One texter into the text line says, I believe this secondary will be faster, better man-to-man guys. 2018, more zone guys. What? Butler and Ryan, they came from New England. What are you talking about? More zone guys. If you're comparing prior accomplishments to being on good teams, then yeah, you're right. But there's elite players that play on unelite teams that are way better than some of the guys that shine because of the teams they play on that are better. Excuse me, what team does L'Jarius Sneed come from?
A good team.
What are we talking about? Where does Chidobe Awuzie's played in 2 places? Cincinnati, last time I checked, when he was there, they were good. And Dallas, the place where they overrate you the most in the NFL. What are we talking about? Jamal Adams played in New York. That's probably the only reason he was an All-Pro anyways. Guy's never picked off a pass in his life. It's like Adoree Jackson. This is what I'm talking about. Somebody texts and goes, here comes negative Jared. You make us dislike being Titans fans. No, you should dislike saying crazy stuff that is not accurate. You $3 million cornerback. Andre Dillard is making more guaranteed money this year than Quandre Diggs on the Titans. When you say things like that, it drives me crazy because it is so disconnected from reality. It is so disconnected. Oh, well, L'Jarius Sneed, he's not, we don't count him like he's, because, he was not on an elite team that nobody watched. Guffaw, he was drafted to a team that won the Super Bowl the year he got drafted. Unbelievable. Again, it's solid. Solid, not what Joe said, which was the most accomplished in franchise history. One texter says, I think the secondary is very good, not the solid you say and not the elite that the other fans say. With the addition of Diggs, it gives the secondary depth and versatility. Also, Hooker is better than league average. Amani Hooker makes $6 million right now. How much money does Xavier McKinney and Antoine Winfield make? And again, I would have cut Amani Hooker this offseason and signed other safeties because, again, Diggs at $3 million, Hooker at $6 million. I can cut Hooker. I probably would have gotten Hooker to take a pay cut because he knows that it wouldn't have been out there.
Well, Winfield signed a 4-4-84 contract with Tampa.
4 for 84?
Yeah.
Okay, Winfield's 21, Derwin James is 19, Fitzpatrick is 18.2, McKinney is 16.75, Bates is 16, Duggar is 14.5, Budda Baker is 14.1, Marcus Williams is 14, Grant Delpit's 12. Who the hell is Jalen Thompson?
Not sure.
Well, he's $12 million. Hooker 6. So stop with the, oh, yeah, no, hey, Kevin Byard makes more money. Hooker is, come on now. I mean.
Jalen Thompson plays for Arizona.
Arizona's got 2 safeties that make double figures, like double-digit millions that, really?
I guess.
I mean, one texter says, importance goes All-Pro Super Bowl winner and then popularity contest, the Pro Bowl is way down the list. Well, 18 had more All-Pros and more Super Bowl winners. I think that'll be okay. One texter says, you sincerely do not know what you're talking about. Logan Ryan was absolutely a zone guy. Yeah, so why did he man up Julio Jones in the Super Bowl? Anybody want to answer that?
Well, I do think some people, want to give credit to Belichick and their defensive scheme more so than the players sometimes.
But again, he was manned up on Julio Jones in the Super Bowl, and they won that Super Bowl. Does that sound like a zone player? I mean,
they mixed it a lot.
Where did Vrabel get his defensive identity from?
Good question.
And who was the defensive coordinator of that 2018 Titans team?
Was that Dean Pease?
It was Dean Pease. And where did Vrabel know Dean Pease from?
New England.
And they play man-to-man. So
they play a bunch. So, yeah, they play both man and zone.
But they're predominantly man.
You
like,
think
that's
so?
Ty Law manning up with that guy, that receiver. I mean, to me, this is ridiculous that you're telling me like, oh, well, Butler couldn't run anymore and McCreary is better than Adoree, and we don't know that. And we didn't know when they signed Malcolm Butler to a top of the market money. Like, we did not know at that point that Butler wasn't the same. You know, Snead, people around the league are worried about Snead. Dan has been waiting patiently. He's up next here on the program. Dan, thank you for calling. Go ahead.
Gentlemen, things are hot and heavy as we get the football season back, eh?
Go for it, Dan.
I'm a Chicago Bears fan coming in peace. Hopes are high from my camp for obvious reasons, though most of my life experience has proven me wrong. I'm curious to know your thoughts on number 31, Kevin Byard, now with the Bears, if he has anything left in the tank. Either way, I'm excited for our matchup with the Titans week 1 as the season's back in action here soon.
All right, I'll tell you about Byard. The fans here think he sucks, but I think that he's still solid. And that is probably, again, he's going to make $7.5 million. And I think compared to those other guys that are making 14 and 15, and I don't think he's a $14, $15 million player anymore. I definitely think that he was worth more than a 5th and a 6th round pick to give up on the season, but make of it what you want. Yeah, I think Byard's fine. Okay, one texter says that Snead is better than Malcolm Butler. Awuzie is better than Adoree Jackson. Logan Ryan was better than McCreary. Byard better than Diggs. And Hooker better than Vaccaro. I'm sorry. What are we talking about here? Vaccaro was better than Hooker. Hooker's fine. Hooker's not. He's fine. Texture says better coverage with Jamal Adams. Titans fans are aware that he has more sacks than picks, right? So true. 615-737-1025 is the phone number. 615-737-1025. Coming up next, I asked L'Jarius Sneed a question about Tyreek Hill. You see, Tyreek Hill was ranked the number 1 player. Well, what did L'Jarius Sneed feel about that, and how should L'Jarius Sneed feel? We'll do that next. Stillman & Company, 1025, 1063 again.
The NFL Top 100 had Tyreek Hill number 1 on the list. We've all seen you against Tyreek, so we don't follow.
You know, I don't pay no mind to that. You know, I did what I did. That's in the past. You know, it's on to next year. He got to see me again this year.
That was L'Jarius Sneed yesterday. So Tyreek Hill is the number 1 player according to the NFL players. They do that list every year. Tyreek number 1. I was kind of surprised by that it wasn't a quarterback and that it wasn't Mahomes. But I was thinking about this and I asked Sneed, I'm like, wait a minute. You know, it's well known about you and Tyreek Hill going up against one another. So last year they went up against each other twice. And I wondered how that went. The first game, this was the game in Germany. Tyreek Hill 8 for 62 in the regular season against Kansas City, which for Hill is high volume. But if Tyreek has 8 catches, he averages about 115 yards. Now, I went and did the math. I think it's 14.14 yards per reception. So if he has 8, that should be 115 yards. Against Kansas City last year, 8 for 62. In the playoffs, 5 for 62. So, again, 5 for 62 in the playoffs. Like, I'd say that's pretty good against the league's number 1 player according to the players. 5 for 62 would be a good day for Treylon Burks, but those are not typical numbers, again, for the number 1 player according to the rest of the league. Now, look, some of that was scheme, and I'm sure L'Jarius Sneed had a little bit of help, but that does give you an idea that if those knees are solid, I think Sneed's probably one of the top 3 corners in the NFL. Okay, so the other thing is Sneed was asked, Ian, if you could, Sneed was asked about the idea that Patrick Mahomes was not number 1 on the list. Here's what he said about that.
What do you think about Mahomes not being number 1?
You know, Mahomes is a great player. Everybody knows that, but you know, I don't pay no parts of that.
Okay, so he didn't want to touch that either. He didn't want to talk about Tyreek. He didn't want to talk about Mahomes. Quite frankly, I don't even know why we talked to L'Jarius Sneed. It's just going to be like that.
He didn't really want to talk about much at all.
No. So I thought about this. Who should be the top 10 players in the league? So I didn't put my top 10 players on the grid, Ian, because I didn't want to show you ahead of time. Did you fill out a top 10 yourself?
I did, yeah.
Okay, so here's what we'll do. We'll go 1 through 10. Ian, if you could get the numbers, we'll go 1 through 10, and I'll give mine, then you give yours, and we'll see how close we end up together. Again, Tyreek Hill is the number 1 player on this list, and I did not look at what the rest of the league picked. I just picked it myself. So let's start at the top.
You want to start at number 1?
I'll start at number 1, and I'll go first.
Number 1.
Patrick Mahomes.
I had Mahomes 1 as well.
Okay.
Number 2.
Chris Jones.
I put McCaffrey.
Really?
Yeah. I like McCaffrey, and he's just crazy versatile, and he plays all the time, and I'm just trying to picture that offense with and without him.
I did not
Number
put
3.
I did not put Christian McCaffrey
in your
my top 10.
Yeah, that's a running back. Some people, yeah, I get it.
Okay, give me number 3 again.
Number 3.
Trent Williams.
I put Hill at 3.
Okay.
Number 4.
Joe Burrow. I don't care that Joe Burrow got hurt last year. Joe Burrow is a dog, and he's the only guy who can constantly beat Mahomes. The other guy, Brady's retired. He's the only guy, and so it is without a doubt for me, obvious Joe Burrow, number 4.
I put Josh Allen.
Okay, I mean, that is fair, but again, you got Allen over Burrow?
I do, yeah. Just as far as overall talent.
Okay.
Number 5.
Justin Jefferson.
I put Myles Garrett.
Not a bad pick.
Number 6.
Tyreek Hill.
I put Lamar.
Really? Lamar did not make my top 10.
Number 7.
Nick Bosa.
Chris Jones.
Well, okay. At least you got Chris Jones in there, who I have at number 2. Number 8.
Number 8.
Kyle Hamilton of the Ravens. I think he's incredible.
Oh.
I think he's incredible.
Safety. Top 10, huh?
I think Kyle Hamilton is incredible. Kyle Hamilton's number 8.
Trent Williams for me at 8.
Okay, see, I can do Trent Williams at 8, but I think Williams is actually better than that. I think he's the best tackle in the game, which takes us to number 9.
Number 9.
Penei Sewell.
I put TJ Watt.
So TJ Watt's pretty good. I just think to myself, like, I think Sewell's the second best tackle in the league. Even if he plays right tackle, I think he's the second best tackle in the league. I think he's a monster. And if you put TJ Watt, for instance, up against Penei Sewell, I think I would take Penei Sewell. So I'll go Penei Sewell number 9.
Number 10.
Josh Allen.
I put Justin Jefferson.
Okay, so at least Jefferson made the top 10.
Yeah.
So the difference is that I included, you didn't put Joe Burrow in the top 10?
I didn't put Burrow in the top 10. No.
Oh, God. What are you thinking?
I mean, I can't put all quarterbacks. I have 3.
You can't have Joe Burrow in the top 10. Well, I mean,
Joe Burrow is good. Don't get me wrong. But as far as overall like talent and skills, I'm putting Lamar, Josh Allen, and Mahomes above him.
if you've got to win a game, who would you rather have at quarterback, Joe Burrow or Lamar?
Probably Lamar.
How? Burrow actually wins in the playoffs.
In what way? He made it to one Super Bowl.
And he made it to the AFC title game.
Okay.
I mean, Lamar has got it. But Joe Burrow's not losing to Ryan Tannehill in the playoffs. The two people Joe Burrow lost.
Almost did.
But he didn't lose. And they won that game because Joe.
Not because of Burrow.
Yes, they did. That ball he hit on the sideline to Jamar Chase, that happened.
They won that game because Ryan Tannehill threw 3 picks. We know that.
Again, game on the line. Defense can make a play. Their defense made a play. Joe hits Jamar down the sideline. No Joe Burrow in the top 10. You are crazy. 615-737-1025. Tavondre Sweat has been so far through camp. Again, it's early. Tavondre Sweat has been all that and a bag of chips. But is it time? Is it time, after all the criticizing we did of the Titans, is it time to apologize for that criticizing? We'll do that next. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106 for the game. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook Live. We are live from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios. So let me just say this. I have strong opinions, we know. I know when the Titans drafted Devondre Sweat, I actually liked the player, but I was nervous when I saw all the stuff come out about the red flags and the teams that were like, no, we're not going to touch this guy. No, we took him off our draft board. No, he weighs too much. No, he's got the weight issues. He's got the DWIs, all that kind of stuff. And then I saw the trade that Carolina made one pick later so that the Rams could take Jared Verse and Braden Fisk or whatever. And I'm like, oh, no. So now that I've gone out to practice, I've seen Devondre Sweat. I have felt Devondre Sweat. I asked Brian Callahan yesterday, have you felt Devondre Sweat? And he was like, yes, I'm standing back there and I feel him. I mean, because he is making a difference. Wood had a safety yesterday of Will Levis, and he worked a $12 million center. He worked the third highest paid center in the NFL yesterday. So with Devondre Sweat dominating at Titans practice, and again, it's not just one practice. I've been to 3 of the 4 padded practices, and I have felt Sweat dominate. I can already hear you guys now. You're going to apologize to Rand Carthon now, Jared? Where? And Ian has informed me that is, in fact, what the YouTube chat has been saying.
Absolutely.
You're going to apologize now to Rand, Jared? No. Not yet. And here's why. Number one, he hasn't done any of this in a game. And the last time I checked, we don't care about practice. We care about the games. I've got an event that I'll be at in Canada in a couple of weeks. And I told everybody, I said, hey, on Monday of that week, I will be on the air. Why? Because the Titans play a game on Saturday, and I have to be on the air on Monday because when people get in the car, they want to hear the Stillman and Company program, and damn it, I'll be giving it to them. And I told my dad that. My dad goes, that's so stupid. For a preseason game? I'm like, yes, preseason games, they're important. Practice? Not so much. Practice just gives us something to do until we start playing the games. So if Devondre Sweat comes out and turns into Reggie White in the games, then we're going to have this discussion, and it'll be a lot closer to, yeah, I'll sit there and say, hey, I mean, I'm not going to put this down. If he's turning into a superstar, I'll take it. Number 2, another reason why, well, again, going back to practice, Chika Okonkwo and Traylon Burks are due for gold jackets if what you did in practice equaled what you would do in a game. Number 2, another reason why I'm not going to apologize yet on the Devondre Sweat front is, as we are all aware, last season, the defensive line dominated the offensive line in training camp. And so sometimes when the defense dominates or a defensive player dominates, i.e. Arden Key dominating last year in training camp, it actually does mean, no, not good defense, but bad offense. You remember, Andre Dillard was getting worked, and Mike Vrabel was like, well, that's Arden Key out there. It'd be one thing if it was like, well, that's Javon Curse out there, and if he didn't break his foot, Javon Curse would be in the Hall of Fame. No, he was telling us that about Arden Key, who had already been let go by the Raiders, the Niners, the Jags, and Vrabel's like, well, I mean, of course he's getting beat. It's Arden Key. Yeah, I don't really see Arden Key and Derrick Henry in the same category. Ian, we just did our top 10 list. Where did Arden Key check in on your top 10 list?
On the top 10? Oh, just missed.
Oh, he didn't make it. Darn. So let's remember, in training camp, sometimes when something good happens, it's not good offense, it's bad defense. It's not good defense, it's bad offense. Remember Racy McMath and all the bombs he caught? Yeah, it's because he was going up against Caleb Farley. That's why. Diami Brown is a nobody, and he burned Caleb Farley for a touchdown in a game. Scotty Miller burned Caleb Farley in a game. It's not about the offense there. It's about the defense. And then the third reason why I'm not ready to anoint the draft pick of T'Vondre Sweat as a slam dunk, and again, get on my knees and apologize for the fact that I was very hard on the Titans after everybody slammed them for the pick, is because right now, T'Vondre Sweat, the red flags, just because we've gone through 2 weeks without weight issues, without drinking and driving issues, without maturity issues, the things that all those scouts talked about and all those GMs talked about, and everybody's like, oh, we took him off our board. Just because we made it through 2 weeks does not mean that we're going to make it through a season. It doesn't mean we're going to make it through 2 seasons or 4 seasons, whatever. Right now, T'Vondre Sweat knows everybody is watching that ass. He knows if he had failed the conditioning test the first day of practice, he knows it would have been an unmitigated disaster for both him and the team. That may have been something that he may have never shaken. And so while he's performing now, the one thing that I personally have a really, really hard time forgetting about is the GM, the unnamed general manager in The Athletic, that told Mike Sando he's going to break your heart. Because these kind of performances that we're seeing in training camp, that's him breaking your heart. Ian, you ever read the relationship book Attached?
Can't say I have, no.
Okay, so there are a bunch of different attachment styles, for different people.
Okay.
And again, maybe I'm giving you credit. I don't know, I love you. I love Nicole. I think you guys are great. I would label you with a secure attachment style, which is good. Some people have anxious attachment styles. So when it comes to their significant other, their lover, when it comes to that, sometimes they're very, very anxious. Oh my God, this person's going to leave me. Oh my God, I made pork. I should have made chicken. Oh my God, oh my God, oh my God.
Uh-huh.
And the other type is avoidant, which they're the people that once it gets serious, they start to back down. We all know those kind of people, right?
Sure.
Okay. The big trap is the anxious avoidant trap, where an anxious person dates an avoidant person, and then the avoidant person, as things get serious, backs out, and the anxious person, because they're anxious, freaks out. I have no idea what causes this, but I did read the book. And in the book, one thing they talked about was when it comes to this anxious avoidant trap, that there are moments of extreme closeness where the anxious person, who again is desperate to have that significant other, the anxious person is like, oh, I think I've got it. There's this moment of extreme closeness, and it pushes the avoidant away. So that anxious person thinks, oh my God, we're extremely close right now. We're connecting. This is what I'm looking for. And the day later, the avoidant person's like, oh, we got to break up. When the GM says, this guy will break your heart, that's what he's talking about. That T'Vondre Sweat has these kind of practices where he shows you that athletic ability with that big tush and huge legs and huge feet and quick arms. And I mean, he's awesome in practice. But he says that GM said, this guy's going to break your heart. When he proves to me that he can do the same thing he's doing right now in practice, that he can do those in the games, when he can prove to me that we don't have to worry about T'Vondre Sweat, that we know he's a pro's pro, that he's going to show up, he's going to work, and I'm not saying you have to be Derrick Henry, but can you meet me at Nick Westbrook-Akine? Once he shows me that, then I'll apologize and say, yeah, you guys did your homework. You guys knew what you were talking about. The rest of the league and all the unnamed scouts and the guys that took them off the boards, they didn't know what they were talking about. And I'll say it. Because as I said They stuck their neck out for T'Vondre Sweat with that 38th pick. So if it comes to fruition that he's Warren Sapp with a fatter ass, then I'll apologize. But we haven't played a game yet. It's been 2 weeks. So let's give it some time. 615-737-1025 is our phone number, 615-737-1025. By the way, speaking of Sweat, I think we now have a weight number on T'Vondre Sweat. We'll get to that next. Stillman & Company, 102.5, 106 through the game.
How much do you feel T'Vondre's presence when you're coaching the offense against him?
A lot. I feel it a lot. He's just so big and so powerful, and he's got real pass rush wiggle for a guy his size. I mean, he can get on the edge and work it. He's got fast hands. And I feel it standing back there. I feel the push. Those are him and Jeff inside. You feel that. And you watch him in one-on-ones, and he can win one-on-one, which a lot of times those big guys struggle to win one-on-one. But he's got enough quickness to do it. So I feel him in the middle of the defense, and I think that's a really good thing for us as a team. It's not great for me in practice.
I felt the same thing, which is why I asked the question. I'm like, how have you been feeling this guy in practice? And the coach is telling you, man, I am feeling him. Like he's telling you, I am feeling him. This guy, he can play. So with that, I did find this to be so fascinating. T'Vondre Sweat weighed 366 pounds at the combine. T'Vondre Sweat, according to some scouts, was weighing about 380 pounds at Texas last year when he won the Outland Trophy. So they draft T'Vondre Sweat, and everybody asks him at rookie minicamp, what's the ideal weight? He's like, I can't tell you. I don't know. Brian Callahan asked about T'Vondre Sweat. He's like, look, I'm never going to get up here and talk to you about somebody's weight, which I respect, because, once you start talking about one guy's weight, then they're going to ask you about it. And just, even though it's football, like, still weight can be a touchy subject, and it's other people's business. You know that. Well, J.C. Latham was up there yesterday, and I think J.C. Latham might have let it slip.
I mean, he's a big boy. You just gotta get your hands on him, and just look to continue to fight. I think he's a great athlete. Someone that big, who he's really good with his hands, really quick and nimble. He's not one of those sloppy bigs who just wants to bull rush every single play. He'll try to get open and get in space and make a move. So I mean, he's like 370. So when you're that big, you're a problem for anybody's unit, really, honestly.
Ian, did he let it slip? Or is J.C. Latham just, 366, round up, 370?
Yeah,
So what's he?
It could be just kind of in generalization. Sure, I could buy that.
I'm a little torn, right? Like, I don't know if these guys are close or not. They're in the same draft class, but they're not in the same position group. Like, maybe they're not tight at all. Maybe it's just like oh, yeah, I knew that he weighed 366, And again, when we're talking about how much a guy weighs, nobody's ever like 366.2. It's always like, oh, yeah, what's he like, 370? I mean, I don't know. All I know is Trevor came on the show after the draft, and Trevor was like, he cannot play in the NFL at 380 pounds. Trevor said he cannot play in the NFL at 380 pounds. Like, that was the one thing that Trevor was like, look, you can't play in the NFL at 380 pounds. Can't do it. So if he's 370, then it's like, okay, well, maybe we still need to get that back out there. Phone line driven by WilsonCountyHunter.com, 615-737-1025. Once again, I am not apologizing to Rand Carthon, Chad Brinker, and Brian Callahan about all the T'Vondre Sweat talk we had until he starts doing this in games. Do it in games and sack the quarterback and play on third down and play in the fourth quarter in the 2-minute drill. If T'Vondre Sweat is chugging out there against the New York Jets in week 2, Aaron's got the ball, down by 4, down by 2, whatever, and the defense has to get a stop, 93 needs to be chugging out there to play in the 2-minute drill. Why? Because that's why you draft guys 38th. To sack the quarterback and to play on third down and in the fourth quarter against the Aaron Rodgers, the Joe Burrows, the Patrick Mahomes, the Lamar Jackson, who Ian has on his list ahead of Joe Burrow, which I think is freaking ridiculous, but that's his business. Very mixed reaction, by the way, about Joe Burrow in the text line.
Yeah.
Neil says, phone line driven by WilsonCountyHunter.com. Neil says, bro, that is not saying much because he's facing a horrible offensive line. What I tell you guys, last year, I thought the Titans with Simmons, Autry, Key, Landry, and Tart. Remember, this was before we all thought T.R. Tart was crazy. I thought T.R. Tart was going to play nose tackle for the Titans last year, go into free agency, and sign a 3-year, $32 million contract. And obviously, it didn't go that way for him. But I thought when it came to the defensive line, I thought the Titans were going to be dominant because every day in training camp last year, they were dominant. Then what did we learn? Oh, yeah, that offensive line they were going up against, putrid. So I'm not going to say this line's as bad because Latham is better than everything that they had last year.
Cushenberry's got to be an upgrade, right?
He was not good yesterday. He was not good, and I don't see any difference. Maybe it'll be different when we play the games.
No difference between him and Brewer in camp so far?
No. I'm talking about the difference between Skoronski last year and this year.
Okay.
I mean, again, Aaron Brewer looked like a basketball player out there, a short basketball player. Whereas, like, Cushenberry looks like a center. But Cushenberry yesterday, he had a bad day at practice. Had a bad snap. And you can't have that. Maddie says, I'm with you, man. Hold that apology until Sweat is in the Defensive Rookie of the Year discussion in Week 10. If he's in the Defensive Rookie of the Year discussion, then that will be you were right. Again, and I'm not trying to couch this. I'm being honest. And I know sometimes people hate that, but it is what it is. Sometimes, like, we forget, like, I kept talking about all the off-the-field stuff. The weight, the DWI, the red flags, the maturity. And I questioned whether or not he can sack the quarterback again in the fourth quarter, the 2-minute drill, third down, when it really matters. But as far as the player, I mean, I like big, fat guys that can move. And he's a big, fat guy that can move. I mean, I like guys with big butts and quick feet. Why? Because those guys get to the Hall of Fame. Like, that is what Reggie White, Warren Sapp, I mean, we saw it when Haynesworth was motivated. I mean, Haynesworth, I know that we were talking about the secondary earlier, and Joe was talking about this is the most accomplished secondary Titans ever. And it's like Hope, Finnegan, and Michael Griffin all went to the Pro Bowl one year. Chris Hope, Cortland Finnegan, and Michael Griffin. Because Albert Haynesworth was wrecking people. Just wrecking them. One texter in the text line says, I understand being cautious during practice, but what are 2 or 3 things that you're actually excited about regarding the Titans so far at camp? Number 1, Tavondre Sweat. I mean, I'm just telling you right now, if you were to say, hey, you know, what's got you jazzed up? The number 1 thing is Tavondre Sweat. Like, he looks like, again, if Tavondre Sweat can sack the quarterback on third down and in the fourth quarter, and he is, you know, he turns into a pro's pro, he might go to the Hall of Fame. Like, again, that size and that athleticism does not exist in normal human beings. It's like Floyd told me he was with the Patriots. He said Vince Wilfork moved like a ballerina. And we know what Vince Wilfork looked like. So that would be the first thing. The second thing, I've been very impressed by J.C. Latham. I think J.C. Latham looks the part of the 7th overall pick. And I don't want to steal this, but I guess I will. You know, have y'all listened to TD talk about Kenneth Murray? I mean, I've seen some of it. I mean, again, I don't want to sound crazy.
He's been getting some hype, Kenneth Murray.
So my only thing about Kenneth Murray was there was a drill where I saw him get to the football. It might have been 7-on-7. It might have been 11-on-11. I can't remember. But, you know, there's a lot of guys that I have to be like, I'm like, who's that? Like, I know who 8 is. I know who 0 is. I know who 10 is. I know who 16 is. I know who 15 is. I know 81, 85, 2, 20. Like, I know all the main guys, right? 98, 93, 58, 49. Like, I know who all the main guys are. But every now and then, you know, especially new guys, you know, if it's like third team, I'm like, Bryce Oliver made a catch the other day in one-on-ones in the end zone where I'm like, who the hell is number 80? And Corey Curtis was standing right next to me. He had the roster. And he goes, Bryce Oliver. And I'm like, well, hey, good catch, Bryce Oliver. So a lot of the times I have to, I do this. I'm like, who are some of these guys that are the unknown guys? Well, first couple of practices, I'm like, who the hell is 56? 56, he looks like Nick Bolton of the Chiefs out there. And it's been Kenneth Murray. Now, TD has been like all over Kenneth Murray. I guess I watched the offensive line too much. So it's like I can't tell you about some of these Levis passes because I'm not watching where the ball's going. I'm watching the offensive line. And we don't have the option that the coaches have where like they can watch every play 100 times because they've got the tape of practice. We get to see it once and that's it. So I'm watching the offensive line because none of this matters if you can't block. But I do have to go with Kenneth Murray because he looks like Nick Bolton out there. 615-737-1025. One person says, you would care about practice if they were stinking it up. Right. Because in the past, with Andre Dillard and Aaron Brewer and Malik Willis, if you can't play, we see it in practice. If you can't play, KP can't play. If you cannot play, we see it in practice. So, yeah, if Devondre Sweat was stinking it up in practice. But again, Burks and Chig are headed to the Practice Hall of Fame. So, can't get too carried away. Tony in LA. Jared, thanks for the update on the first 2 picks in the O-line. Have you seen any time that the O-line clearly won, or is the defensive line that dominant? I mean, the offensive line's had their moments. I want to say there were a couple runs that were popped. There was one to the right side. I believe it was Pollard yesterday that popped a nice little run in there. There have been some clean pockets for Levis. I mean, look, even Andre Dillard didn't give him a sack on every play. But if you had to tell me, hey, how do you feel about the line? I'd say Latham, good. Cushenberry has been solid and has the reputation, but yesterday, probably not his best day, which I was disappointed by. Skoronski, man, I'm, again, small sample size. But when you're getting turnstiled in the one-on-ones yesterday with the pads on by dudes, again, I have to look at the roster. Who the hell is that? That's not a good sign. And the right guard's a mess. Nicholas Teat Frere, a.k.a.
PT.
He looked solid yesterday. Really did. I watched him every rep he had. He looked solid. Doesn't mean he's going to be a star. Doesn't mean he's starting right now. But he looked solid, which I got to give him credit for. So that's where I am on the O-line. But, yeah, I mean, defense is ahead of the offensive line. Certainly not as bad as Dillard last year, that's for sure. 615-737-1025 is our phone number. So, Ian, have you watched any of this Giants Hard Knocks?
You know what? I have not.
So I think it is incredible. But in the last 2 episodes of this Giants Hard Knocks, they went over the draft, specifically the 6th pick. Well, we know who had the 7th pick. And boy, was it interesting. We'll get to that next. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game.
How's your anxiety level?
Bad.
The pick is in, Jared.
It's in.
Here he comes. Oh, here's the commish.
Let's see.
Here it comes.
If it's Joe Alt.
With the fifth pick in the 2024 NFL Draft, the Los Angeles Chargers select Joe Alt.
Oh, my
No.
Jared is crying now. He doesn't know what the Titans are going to do now.
Oh.
Tell him how you feel.
You guys got to go to Chris Sanders' Twitter feed because he's got video evidence of Jared.
Oh, my gosh.
Jared now has his head down on his right wrist. His left arm is bent around, and his left hand is in a tight fist. He's going to punch himself in the face in any minute.
Oh, those were good times. Those are good times. Draft night 2024. I remember leaving my house, making the long journey out to Twin Peaks that night, and I was listening to the midday show, and Caroline said, "What are the odds Jared's going to have a meltdown tonight?" And she said, minus 660. And I was like, joke's on those losers because the Titans are going to take Joe Alt. I'm going to be a happy man. And I'm going to be at Twin Peaks with my guys. You're like, yes. And instead, Joe Alt went to the Chargers. Remember, I guaranteed that the Chargers are going to take a wide receiver. And they did not. So the Giants Hard Knocks finale was last week. I just caught up on it over the weekend. And let me say this. I freaking loved it. The last two, so the beginning of it is about, the Saquon Barkley Giants trying to find their way. Then it takes to free agency and the guys they let go and the guys they went and signed. And Joe Shane looked like a moron during free agency. Clearly, he's more of a draft guy, the general manager of the Giants, than he is a free agency guy because it didn't look like they knew what they were doing. But then like the last 2-3 episodes were about the draft. They show you them at the combine, talking to Drake May, talking to Jaden Daniels, talking to Marvin Harrison, talking to Roma Dunze, talking to all these guys. And then they take you behind the scenes of the discussions in the building between the GM, the coach, the owner, the other guys. They take you through the conversations. I absolutely loved it. I think preseason Hard Knocks is boring. It's the same show every year, right? We're going to follow the number one pick. We're going to follow the star player. We're going to follow a coach. And we're going to follow some undrafted free agent out of Scarbini State. And we're going to show you him getting yelled at by the coaches. And let's see if he can make it or not. Every year. That's preseason Hard Knocks. In-season Hard Knocks, again, more about the players and the games. And, oh, hey, here's the guy with his wife on Tuesday. This was, really detailed inside, behind the scenes of the Giants throughout the offseason. And I'm convinced after watching it that the NFL, they're never going to do this again because I thought it was too much information. But as I told people at practice yesterday, like I told Corey Curtis, I don't think they're ever going to do this. He said, oh, they'll do it. They'll do it because it makes money. And I'm like, you know what, Corey? That's a good point. Maybe the NFL says, hey, we're doing it because it's popular. And if that's the case, Ian, you know who I want to be the team next year that does the offseason Hard Knocks?
Who's that?
The Titans.
Oh, ready for it, huh?
I want the Titans. Offseason Hard Knocks. That I want it. And I want the Titans to put their hand in the air and say, we will do it, NFL. But my favorite part was listen to some of the conversations that they had around the draft choice. And tell me this is not the same stuff. So this first one is Joe Shane in the office with his lieutenants. By the way, Ryan Cowden plays a big role in the hierarchy of the New York Giants. But, listen to this. And this is Joe Shane with his lieutenants talking about that sixth pick that they have. They want Malik Neighbors or Marvin Harrison. And this is them going over the possibilities.
When I call Monty, because I was going to get something in place with Monty too at 4. I don't think Monty's going to move. I think he's dead set on Marvin Harrison, and he don't want to around. So I'm really hoping that the Chargers go tackle at 5. Harbaugh, his formula was run the ball and pound, control the ball. They like Alton Latham, but if Neighbors is there, I don't know what order they had him, but he's in the mix for him.
I think if we got a call to go back, I'd think about it. To me, it'd be to call Rand. If Marvin goes 4, Neighbors goes 5, then I definitely call.
Yeah. All right, so we are looking at one of those 6 players.
Okay. I mean, is that not the same kind of discussions that we had on the radio?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I mean, remember the whole, if Drake May falls to 7, what do you do? And those are the same conversations that they had in that building. I mean, I watched Joe Shane talk it out with Brian Dable and the owner saying, hey, would you be willing to give up next year's 1 to move up to 3 to take Drake May? And again, the Giants, they'll tell you right now, oh yeah, no, Daniel Jones is our guy. But he clearly wasn't when they were looking at drafting either Jaden Daniels or Drake May. They're like, if we can get to 3, we're going to take quarterback. And then at the end, the day, like the morning of or the afternoon of the draft, it's the coach, who, by the way, I think is a freaking slob, Dable. So it's the coach, the GM, Joe Shane at the desk, and then the 2 owners of the team, John Mara, who's the main owner, and then Steve Tisch, who is the other owner, right? And I guarantee you there are meetings like this between Rand Carthon, Chad Brinker, Brian Callahan, Amy Adams Strunk, Kenneth Adams, and Barclay Cunningham Adams, that they have these same conversations. And again, I keep listening to this stuff, and I'm like, man, these are the same discussions we had. So this was my favorite part. Just again, me personally, some people will love the watching Joe Shane call the Patriots and talk to Elliott Wolf about trying to move up to number 3. They'll say, oh, wow, that's the best part. Or Joe Shane calling Saquon Barkley. They'll say that's the best part because that's the behind the curtain for them. This, for me, was when they bring the owners in and they're going over the plan, here's how it all went down.
With an hour left before the draft begins, Joe Shane has finalized his plan. Time to share it with his bosses.
I'll put it up here if that works better for you. You know, we're at 6. Jaden Daniels or Drake May. I think they're both going to go at 2 or 3. New England's not going to trade out of there, and I think they're taking Drake May. If those 3 quarterbacks are taken, we're going to stay at 6 if Marvin Harrison or Malik Neighbors are there. We're just going to turn the card in, high five, and we're going to have a number 1 receiver. If those guys go 4 and 5, Rome is there. We like Rome. We're all fans of Rome. Chicago has been in contact with me. They're at 9, looking to come up to 6. It would be, they have a 3rd and a 4th round pick, and then we would give them back a 5th. If Chicago calls me and tells me they are coming up for a tackle, let's say it's Joe Alt, we move back to 9. They go tackle. Tennessee's at 7. Everybody thinks they're taking a tackle. So it goes tackle, tackle. You're sitting at 8 now. They don't have an outside backer or rusher.
So they probably take Dallas Turner.
They're probably taking Dallas Turner or Latu from UCLA. So now you're at 9 and you get Rome. Or if, let's say, somebody wanted to trade up, which we've talked to a lot of these teams back here and they're not real fired up, but say somebody traded up to 8 and took Rome or Bowers, you're getting Rome or Bauer, one of the 2 at 9, and you're picking up a 3rd and 4th round pick. This is only if Neighbors and Harrison go 4 and 5, which all indications are if the Chargers stay, they're going to take a tackle, and we would just stay, and we would take Malik Neighbors or Marvin.
That's not out of the question. The Chargers would take Neighbors. They need a receiver.
Yeah, that's why I'm going through this, because if I thought it was 100%, then I wouldn't even be – I'd feel very confident we're just going to take Malik.
By the way, thank you, John Mara. Everybody around the draft time was like, well, Harbaugh, he's looking offensive line. He's looking tackle. He wants to build this. This is how Harbaugh wants to do it. And I'm like, they don't have a receiver. How do you do this when you don't have a receiver? And everybody's like, no, Harbaugh, he wants to build with the line. And everybody was right and I was wrong, but at least there was somebody else, John Mara, that's like, they need a receiver. And Malik Neighbors is right there. And it's incredible to me to think that the Chargers, who needed a receiver, were going to take Joe Alt no matter what. I heard at the Super Bowl that the Chargers wanted Joe Alt. Ian, did I not come on the air the Tuesday after the Super Bowl and say, I heard at the Super Bowl that the Chargers are sniffing around on Joe Alt?
I think that's right.
And so I heard it, and I dismissed it when they traded Keenan Allen because I'm like, oh, that was just a smokescreen because people lie around the draft. And Joe Shane sitting there saying, I mean, it sounds like they want Alt or Latham. And the owner of the Giants is like, but they don't have a receiver. I'm like, thank you. I'm not the only idiot in the world. And I believe that if Neighbors or Harrison had been there, I believe the Titans would have taken one of those two players over J.C. Latham. Like, I think they would have taken the tackle. So it's crazy that the Chargers, who didn't have a receiver, took a tackle, and the Titans, who didn't have a tackle, probably would have taken a receiver, which is crazy to me. But again, I keep going through this stuff, and I'm like, these are the same conversations that we have on the radio. Like, okay, if they take them, then what do the Titans do? Think about all the mock draft simulations we did where we talked about, okay, if this guy's available, then what about that guy? And I got to tell you, like, I enjoyed it thoroughly. And next year, I want to see Titans offseason Hard Knocks, because we're going to be talking every day about what the Titans do or what the Titans don't do. And I would love to see the conversations that we have on the radio, see what they do, our reaction to it, and then months later, see what was actually going on behind the scenes. By the way, again, not that I think the Giants are smart, because I've got my issues with the New York Football Giants. But Ian, did you see how they liked the same players I liked?
The Giants?
Yes. Which,
Which,
again, I think Joe Shane's a buffoon, but they liked the same player. They liked Malik Neighbors. Who liked Malik Neighbors back? Remember when Joe and Robbie were laughing like Beavis and Butthead?
Oh, you said Neighbors over Harrison?
Yes. Well, I guess Brian Daboll's stupid too, guys, because he was sitting there. I think he's a slob.
Well, he said they would take Harrison or Neighbors, whoever fell.
No, but in Hard Knocks, like, they were sitting in the draft room, and Daboll was like, not Malik. Whoever they take, not Malik. And then when they got Malik, he's like, that was my guy on the board. And Shane was like, your number one guy. So I think they liked Malik more than Harrison. They would have taken Harrison, but I think they liked Malik more than Harrison. And I liked Malik more than Harrison. And then what did I keep saying when the Titans were on the board and Alt was gone? I was like, Adunze or Bowers. Take Adunze or take Bowers. Now, look, Latham's looked good. I'm not crapping on Latham right now. But that was my thing, was Adunze or Bowers. And what were they willing to do? Adunze or Bowers.
If they traded back, yeah.
By the way, they did not have the spidey sense that Rand Carthon had to think that Atlanta was going to go quarterback, as we saw.
No, they projected edge rusher as well, just like everyone else.
Just like everyone else. I was surprised, though, that Latu, that they were talking about Latu, because nobody, I think, when Indy took him at 15, it was like, what?
He was the first edge taken. So
gotta give him credit there. 615-737-1025, Stillman and Company, 1025, 106 for the game.
this a normal week for you, or with the game on Saturday, do you guys change things up?
It's a normal week. We only have so many padded practices, and we'll keep our same rhythm. So this, back-to-back padded practices going into an off day. We'll have our jog through the day after that. We'll practice twice more in pads, and then we'll have sort of a day before the game walk through, and then we'll go play. And the reason we do that is because generally, even our starters, they're going to play a little bit, but it's not going to be overly taxing on them. And you try to emphasize the ones reps in the padded practices, and maybe you pull the 2s and 3s back because they're going to play more in practice. But we won't change our rhythm for the first game.
There you go. That was Brian Callahan talking about the game on Saturday. With the game on Saturday means the Titans have game notes to release, including the first unofficial depth chart that has been released. Now, Ian, do you believe that on Wednesday, if he's asked about the unofficial depth chart, that Brian Callahan will pull the Vrabel and be like, oh, I don't know anything about this. You need to talk to the PR staff about this. Or do you think Brian Callahan will admit the fact that the PR staff is not running a depth chart that the coach didn't at least look at and give a thumbs up to?
Yeah, that'd be interesting. I would think Callahan would acknowledge it, probably some.
Okay, so here's the first depth chart. Wide receiver, Calvin Ridley. Tight end, Chiga Okonkwo or Josh Wiley. So we're right about there being a battle for the tight end spot. Left tackle, J.C. Latham. Left guard, Peter Skoronski. Center, Lloyd Cushenberry III. Right guard, Sadiq Charles. No or. Tight end gets an or. Right guard does not. Right tackle, Nicholas Petit-Frere, a.k.a. PT. Wide receiver, Tyler Boyd. Wide receiver, DeAndre Hopkins. Quarterback, Will Levis. Running back, Tony Pollard or Tajay Spears. You think that's like a seniority thing where they put Pollard ahead of Spears?
Yeah, maybe.
Backups. NWI is behind Ridley. Nick Vinette's behind the two tight ends. Jaron Christian is the backup left tackle. And John Ojukwu is the backup right guard. Burks is behind Hopkins, so you can't get a read into that Burks and NWI thing, which I think should be a real thing. No surprises there. Defense. Defensive end, Sebastian Joseph Day. Nose tackle, Tavondre Sweat. Defensive tackle, Jeffrey Simmons. Although I think, this is me, I think Simmons is more of an end than Joseph Day is, but what do I know? Outside linebacker, Arden Key. Inside linebacker, Kenneth Murray. Inside linebacker, Jack Gibbons. No surprise there. By the way, Cedric Gray is not even on the second team. For all you people that were like, we drafted our green dot inside backer in the 4th round. Like, you do not draft starters in the 4th round right away. If it's Puka Nacua, it becomes a thing, but you don't do that. He's 3rd string. Chance Campbell and Garrett Wallow are behind him. Rashad Weaver behind Arden Key. So when Arden Key gets suspended, that tells you they're going to start Weaver there. I think Weaver sucks. I feel like he's gotten enough chances. That's just me. Shane Ray behind Landry. Awuzie, McCreary, Hooker, Adams, and Sneed. In the secondary, this does not include, what's his name?
Diggs.
Quandre Diggs. Because I don't think he's officially signed yet. And then kicker, punter, we know. Kickoff return, Tajay Spears. Punt return, Mason Kinsey. Now think about this. If Mason Kinsey ends up being the punt returner of this team, and there's no guarantee that he will be, but if he ends up being the punt returner of this team, that means that he's got to make the roster, right? Unless they want to call him up off the practice squad, but you can only do that, I think, like 3-4 times, something like that. So that's just something to keep an eye on. Kieris Jackson is the number 1 backup behind Mason Kinsey, and Kyle Phillips is behind him. So, Jaquan Jackson in the 6th round, if you can't return the punts and you're not returning the kickoffs where they've got Tajay Spears as the guy returning the kickoffs, if you're not returning the kickoffs, you're probably not making the team. So that's our first unofficial look at the Titans depth chart. That's it for us. We are out of here. We'll be back tomorrow at 2 with the latest. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game.